It was a warm evening on June 29, 2019 in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. The summer sun had just set, casting long shadows across the quiet neighborhood. At around 8:30 p.m., Josh Parker, a 33-year-old software engineer, made a frantic call to the Old Saybrook Police Department. He had just found his wife, Vanessa Parker, dead in their master bedroom. Josh had been out running errands that evening. He went to Stop and Shop to pick up groceries and then swung by Starbucks for a coffee. When he returned home, he noticed that the house was unusually quiet. Calling out for Vanessa, he received no response. Concerned, he walked up the stairs to their bedroom, where he discovered the horrifying scene. Vanessa, a 32-year-old event planner, was lying on the floor, her wedding veil wrapped tightly around her neck. The room was a mess, with furniture overturned and personal items scattered everywhere, showing signs of a struggle. Josh immediately dialed 911, his voice trembling as he described the situation. When the dispatcher asked Josh to check for a pulse, he complied, but it was clear Vanessa was gone. His shock turned to despair as he sat on the floor beside her, waiting for the police to arrive. He was visibly shaken, his hands trembling and his face pale. Despite the trauma, he managed to stay on the line with the dispatcher, answering questions and providing as much information as he could. Within minutes, the Old Saybrook police arrived at the scene. Officers secured the area and took charge of the investigation. Neighbors gathered outside, their faces reflecting a mix of shock and curiosity. The usually serene neighborhood was now buzzing with activity as news of the incident spread. Local media, including the Hartford Courant and Channel 3 Eyewitness News, arrived on the scene, capturing footage of the police activity and interviewing neighbors who expressed their disbelief over the tragedy. The discovery of Vanessa Parker's body marked the beginning of a complex investigation that would uncover shocking secrets and lead to a devastating conclusion. As the night wore on, the police worked diligently to gather evidence and piece together the events that led to Vanessa's untimely death. Vanessa Parker was 32 years old at the time of her death. She was an event planner in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, known for her demanding and perfectionist nature. Friends and family had nicknamed her Bridezilla in the months before her wedding. Vanessa lived with her husband, Josh Parker, in a cozy house on Main Street. They had recently spent $100,000 on their lavish wedding, which took place at the historic Saybrook Point Inn, a popular venue for such grand events. Vanessa was ambitious and meticulous in her work and quickly made a name for herself in the event planning industry. She was the go-to person for organizing upscale weddings and corporate events in the area. Her clients included high-profile companies and wealthy families who admired her dedication and attention to detail. Despite her demanding personality, Vanessa had a close group of friends who respected her drive. Her best friend, Jessica Moore, was always by her side. Jessica, a marketing manager, had been Vanessa's confidant since their college days. They often met at the local cafe at Ashlawn Farm Coffee to discuss work and life over a cup of their favorite brew. In the days leading up to her death, Vanessa was busy finalizing details for an upcoming corporate event. She had spent hours working on seating arrangements and floral designs, determined to make everything perfect. Despite the stress, Vanessa had big dreams. She wanted to expand her business, possibly opening a second office in New York City. She envisioned herself as a leading figure in the event planning world, admired for her creativity and professionalism. Vanessa's life seemed perfect on the outside, but she carried a burden of secrets. Her demanding nature and high standards often put a strain on her relationships. The discovery of her body marked the tragic end of a life filled with ambition and dreams, leaving her family and friends in shock and grief. The Old Saybrook police arrived at the Parker residence within minutes of Josh's frantic 911 call on June 29, 2019. The team was led by Detective Sarah Collins, a seasoned investigator with 15 years of experience. Detective Collins, known for her thorough and methodical approach, quickly took control of the scene. As the officers entered the master bedroom, they were met with a chaotic and disturbing sight. The room was in complete disarray, with furniture overturned and personal items scattered across the floor. Vanessa Parker's body lay on the floor, her wedding veil tightly wrapped around her neck. The scene suggested a violent struggle had taken place. Detective Collins noted the presence of broken glass, likely from a shattered lamp, and bloodstains on the carpet, adding to the grim tableau. The initial assessment pointed to a crime of passion. Vanessa's death appeared to be the result of strangulation, a brutal and personal method of murder. The use of her own wedding veil as the murder weapon added a chilling element to the crime, indicating a deep emotional connection between the victim and the perpetrator. Detective Collins and her team began their meticulous investigation. They documented the scene with photographs and sketches, ensuring every detail was captured. They collected fingerprints from various surfaces, hoping to find matches that could identify the killer. Fibers and hair samples were also gathered, providing additional forensic evidence that might link the suspect to the crime scene. The police used luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains, illuminating areas that had been cleaned in an attempt to cover up the crime. They also utilized advanced tools like 3D scanners to create a detailed digital model of the room, allowing them to analyze the positions and movements during the struggle. Detective Collins interviewed Josh Parker, who was visibly shaken and cooperative. He provided an alibi for his whereabouts earlier in the evening, claiming he had been running errands. Despite his calm demeanor, the detectives kept him under close scrutiny, aware that spouses are often primary suspects in such cases. Neighbors were also interviewed, with officers canvassing the area to gather any information about unusual activities or suspicious individuals. The local community was in shock, and the media, including the Hartford Courant and Channel 3 Eyewitness News, reported on the tragic event, increasing pressure on the police to solve the case quickly. As the investigation progressed, Detective Collins and her team remained focused and determined, knowing that solving Vanessa Parker's murder required piecing together every bit of evidence and uncovering the hidden truths behind her tragic death. Josh Parker, Vanessa's husband, was the first person the police investigated. At 33 years old, Josh worked as a software engineer. He was known for his calm and composed nature, which often complemented Vanessa's demanding personality. However, the pressure of their lavish $100,000 wedding had taken a toll on him. Friends mentioned that Josh had been more stressed lately, trying to keep up with Vanessa's high expectations and the financial strain. The police brought Josh in for questioning on June 30, 2019, the day after Vanessa's body was found. Detective Sarah Collins led the interrogation. Josh appeared tired and distraught, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Despite his exhaustion, he maintained a cooperative attitude. He recounted his activities on the evening of June 29th, explaining that he had been running errands, including stops at Stop and Shop and Starbucks, before returning home to find Vanessa. During the questioning, Detective Collins noticed Josh's hands were trembling slightly, a sign of his nervousness. He described his relationship with Vanessa as loving, but admitted that her demanding nature had been challenging. He mentioned the strain of planning their expensive wedding and the arguments they had about money. Josh's demeanor remained mostly calm, but there were moments when his voice wavered, revealing the depth of his emotional turmoil. The police asked Josh about his whereabouts during the estimated time of Vanessa's death. He provided detailed accounts of his activities, including receipts from the grocery store and the coffee shop to support his alibi. Despite his cooperative behavior, Detective Collins and her team knew they needed to verify every detail. They collected Josh's fingerprints and took a DNA sample to compare with the evidence found at the crime scene. Friends and family described Josh as a patient and understanding person. He was known for his supportive nature, often going out of his way to help Vanessa with her event planning business. However, the financial burden of their wedding and Vanessa's high expectations had pushed him to his limits. Detective Collins continued to probe, looking for any inconsistencies in Josh's story. They asked him about any recent arguments or conflicts with Vanessa, to which he admitted they had fought about money and the wedding expenses. Despite the tension, he insisted that he would never harm Vanessa. As the investigation progressed, the police kept a close eye on Josh. His cooperative attitude and detailed alibi were crucial, but Detective Collins knew that uncovering the truth required thorough and meticulous work. They needed to explore every lead to ensure they did not overlook any crucial evidence. Jessica Moore, Vanessa's best friend and maid of honor, was the next person the police investigated. Jessica was 31 years old and worked as a marketing manager. Known for her cheerful and supportive demeanor, she was a loyal friend to Vanessa despite her demanding nature. Jessica and Vanessa had been inseparable since their college days at the University of Connecticut, where they both majored in business. On June 30, 2019, Detective Sarah Collins and her team brought Jessica in for questioning. Jessica appeared visibly shaken, her eyes red from crying. She described her relationship with Vanessa as close and supportive. They often met at Ashlawn Farm Coffee to catch up and discuss their lives. Jessica recounted the days leading up to Vanessa's death. explaining that they had been busy with last-minute wedding preparations. During the interrogation, a shocking revelation came to light. Jessica was not just Vanishes' friend. She was also her lover and secret wife. The two had been married for 3 years, a fact they had kept hidden from everyone, including Josh. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the investigation. Jessica admitted that she and Vanessa had been planning to defraud Josh by blackmailing him with compromising photos Vanessa had taken. Detective Collins noticed Jessica's nervousness as she spoke. Her voice trembled and she fidgeted with her hands. Despite her anxiety, Jessica insisted that she had no part in Vanessa's murder. She explained that their blackmail scheme was meant to secure financial stability for both of them, not to harm anyone. Jessica's emotional turmoil was evident, but she maintained her innocence throughout the questioning. The police asked Jessica about her whereabouts on the night of Vanessa's death. She provided an alibi stating that she had been at home, working on a marketing campaign for her company. She mentioned specific details about the campaign, including emails and files she had worked on, which the police later verified. They also collected Jessica's fingerprints and DNA samples to compare with the evidence found at the crime scene. Friends and colleagues described Jessica as a hardworking and dedicated individual. She was well-liked at her job and known for her positive attitude. However, the revelation of her secret relationship with Vanessa and their blackmail scheme cast a shadow over her character. As the investigation continued, Detective Collins and her team remained focused on uncovering the truth. Jessica's emotional state and detailed alibi were important factors, but the detectives knew they had to examine all aspects of her relationship with Vanessa and their secret plans. On July 2, 2019, 3 days after Vanessa Parker's death, a break in the case emerged. It was a humid afternoon in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, with temperatures climbing into the high 80s. Detective Sarah Collins received a call from a local resident who claimed to have found something suspicious while walking his dog in a nearby park. He had been walking his golden retriever, Buddy Rogers Jr., through Saybrook Point Park when Buddy started barking at a bush near the water's edge. Curious, he approached and discovered a smartphone partially hidden under the foliage. Realizing the potential significance, he immediately contacted the police. Detective Collins and her team quickly arrived at the scene. The phone was carefully collected and sent to the forensics lab for analysis. Within hours, technicians managed to unlock the phone and retrieve its data. What they found would change the course of the investigation. The phone belonged to Vanessa Parker. Among the texts, photos, and emails, investigators found a series of incriminating messages between Vanessa and her secret wife, co-conspirator and lover, Jessica Moore. The messages detailed their blackmail scheme against Josh Parker, with explicit instructions on how to execute their plan after the wedding. Additionally, the phone contained compromising photos of Josh that were meant to be used as leverage for blackmail. Detective Collins reviewed the new evidence with a mix of relief and determination. The messages revealed the extent of Vanessa and Jessica's plot, providing a clearer motive for the crime. The team also discovered a series of heated exchanges between Vanessa and an unknown number, later identified as belonging to Michael Reynolds, Vanessa's other spouse from San Diego. The text showed that Michael was furious about Vanessa's threats to release a sex tape involving her and his mother, adding another layer to the complex web of relationships and motives. With this new evidence, the police focused on tracking the movements of Jessica and Michael around the time of the murder. They checked surveillance footage from nearby stores and traffic cameras, trying to establish their whereabouts. The forensic team also compared the fingerprints and DNA found on the phone with those collected at the crime scene. The discovery of Vanessa's phone was a significant breakthrough. It provided crucial insights into the motives and actions of the key suspects. Detective Collins and her team felt a renewed sense of urgency and determination to bring the case to a close. They knew they were getting closer to uncovering the truth behind Vanessa Parker's tragic death. Michael Reynolds, Vanessa's other spouse, was the third person the police investigated. Michael, 40, worked as a construction manager in San Diego. He had a reputation for being hot-headed and had a tumultuous past with Vanessa. Despite moving on, he had occasional run-ins with her, leading to speculation about lingering feelings and unresolved issues. On July 3, 2019, Detective Sarah Collins and her team brought Michael in for questioning. Michael had flown in from San Diego after hearing about Vanessa's death. He appeared agitated and defensive during the interrogation, his frustration evident in his clenched fists and terse answers. He described his relationship with Vanessa as volatile, marked by frequent arguments and dramatic reconciliations. Michael revealed that Vanessa had been blackmailing him, threatening to release a sex tape she had made with his mother. This revelation painted a picture of Vanessa as manipulative and ruthless, willing to go to extreme lengths to control those around her. Michael admitted that he was furious with Vanessa, but insisted that he would never harm her. The police asked Michael about his whereabouts on the night of Vanessa's death. He claimed he was in San Diego working late on a construction project. Michael provided contact details for his coworkers, who corroborated his alibi. He also showed flight records to prove he had only arrived in Connecticut after learning about the murder. Detective Collins noticed Michael's volatility during the questioning. He frequently raised his voice and seemed on the verge of losing his temper. Despite his anger, Michael consistently denied any involvement in Vanessa's death. He expressed relief at being away from her manipulations, but also a sense of regret for the way their relationship had turned out. Friends and colleagues described Michael as hardworking but prone to outbursts of anger. His temper was well known in his professional circles, but he was also respected for his dedication to his work. The revelation of his tumultuous relationship with Vanessa and the blackmail added a layer of complexity to his character. The police collected Michael's fingerprints and DNA samples, comparing them with the evidence found at the crime scene. They also examined his phone records and text messages, looking for any signs of communication with Vanessa leading up to her death. As the investigation continued, Detective Collins and her team remained vigilant, aware that the truth was often hidden beneath layers of lies and deception. Michael's volatile nature and detailed alibi were crucial pieces of the puzzle, but the detectives knew they had to keep digging to uncover the full story behind Vanessa Parker's tragic death. On July 5, 2019, Detective Sarah Collins and her team finally identified the murderer. Josh Parker, Vanessa's husband, was the one who strangled her with her wedding veil. The breakthrough came after the police meticulously analyzed the evidence found on Vanessa's phone and the crime scene. Josh Parker, 33, had always seemed like the perfect husband. He was a calm and composed software engineer admired for his patience and supportive nature. However, beneath this calm exterior, Josh was struggling with the immense pressure of Vanessa's demanding personality and the financial strain of their $100,000 wedding. The discovery of Vanessa's secrets pushed him over the edge. The night before Vanessa's murder, Josh had discovered incriminating messages and photos on her phone. He found out about Vanessa's secret marriages to Jessica Moore and Michael Reynolds, as well as the blackmail schemes. This shocking betrayal led to a heated argument between Josh and Vanessa, which escalated into a physical struggle. Detective Collins pieced together the events leading up to the murder. Vanessa's veil was used to strangle her in the master bedroom, indicating a crime of passion. The disarray in the room and the evidence of a struggle pointed to Josh as the perpetrator. The police compared Josh's DNA and fingerprints with those found at the crime scene, confirming his involvement. On the evening of July 5, 2019, Detective Collins and her team moved in to arrest Josh Parker. They found him at the couple's home on Main Street, sitting in the living room, seemingly lost in thought. The officers approached him cautiously, explaining the charges and reading him his rights. Josh did not resist. Instead, he seemed resigned, his expression a mix of sorrow and relief. As the handcuffs were placed on Josh, he looked around the room one last time. He was not surprised by his arrest. He knew it was inevitable. The Parker family's reactions were a mix of shock and sorrow. Vanessa's parents, Robert and Linda Parker, were devastated by the news, struggling to comprehend the tragedy that had unfolded. Vanessa's sister, Emily, was inconsolable, mourning the loss of her sister and the collapse of their family. The arrest of Josh Parker brought some closure to the investigation, but left a trail of heartbreak in its wake. The Parker family and their friends grappled with the reality of Vanessa's death and the betrayal within their own home. The community of Old Saybrook was left reeling, trying to make sense of the tragic events that had shattered their sense of security. The trial of Josh Parker began on October 15, 2022, at the Middlesex Superior Court in Middletown, Connecticut. The courtroom was packed with media, including reporters from the Hartford Courant and Channel 3 Eyewitness News. The case had attracted significant attention due to the shocking nature of the crime and the revelations about Vanessa Parker's secret lives. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Lisa Brown Hemley, a 45-year-old known for her tenacity and keen legal mind. Brown Hemley argued that Josh Parker had premeditated the murder after discovering Vanessa's secret marriages and blackmail schemes. She presented the evidence found on Vanessa's phone, including the incriminating messages and photos, as well as the forensic evidence linking Josh to the crime scene. Brown Hemley painted a picture of a man pushed to his limits by betrayal and financial stress, culminating in a violent act of rage. The defense attorney, Brian Stevens, a 50-year-old with a reputation for his persuasive arguments and empathetic approach, argued that Josh Parker had acted in a moment of temporary insanity. Stevens claimed that the discovery of Vanishes' double life and deceit had caused Josh to lose control. He portrayed Josh as a loving husband driven to a breaking point by the overwhelming stress and emotional turmoil. The trial lasted 3 weeks with emotional testimonies from family members and friends. Vanishes' parents, Robert and Linda Parker, attended every day, their faces etched with grief. Vanishes' sister, Emily, often broke down in tears, struggling to cope with the loss and the betrayal by her brother-in-law. The courtroom atmosphere was tense, with both the prosecution and defense presenting compelling arguments. On November 19, 2022, the jury delivered their verdict. Josh Parker was found guilty of second-degree murder. The decision was met with mixed reactions. Vanishes' family expressed relief that justice had been served, though the pain of their loss remained. Some community members felt the sentence was too lenient, given the premeditated nature of the crime. Judge Karen Miller sentenced Josh Parker to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. In her sentencing remarks, she acknowledged the emotional and psychological strain Josh had been under, but emphasized that taking a life was an unforgivable act. Josh showed little reaction as the sentence was read, his face a mask of resignation. The verdict and sentencing had a profound impact on all involved. Vanishes' family and friends continued to grapple with their grief, finding some solace in the justice system's decision. The trial's outcome was seen as a step toward healing, though the scars left by Vanishes' death, and the trial would linger for years to come. After the trial, the lives of everyone involved were forever changed. Josh Parker began serving his 25-year prison sentence at the MacDougall Walker Correctional Institution in Suffield, Connecticut. The facility, known for its high security, became Josh's new home as he adjusted to life behind bars. Reports from local news outlets, including the Hartford Courant, followed his transition, noting his attempts to come to terms with his actions and the reality of his long sentence. Josh's family struggled to cope with the fallout. His parents, who had been supportive throughout the trial, found it difficult to visit him. They faced the dual challenge of dealing with their son's incarceration and the public scrutiny surrounding the case. They occasionally spoke with reporters, expressing their sorrow over the tragedy and their hope for Josh's eventual redemption. Vanessa Parker's family tried to rebuild their lives after the trial. Vanessa's parents, Robert and Linda Parker, continued to live in Old Saybrook, where they were active in local memorial activities to honor Vanessa's memory. They set up a scholarship fund in her name at her alma mater, the University of Connecticut, to support students pursuing careers in event planning. The scholarship was reported by local media as a way to keep Vanessa's legacy alive and contribute positively to the community. Jessica Moore, who had initially been a key suspect, faced her own challenges. Though she was not charged with any crime, the revelation of her secret marriage to Vanessa and their blackmail scheme led to a significant loss of her professional reputation. Jessica left her job as a marketing manager and moved to a different state to start anew, distancing herself from the scandal. She maintained a low profile, with few public appearances reported. Michael Reynolds, Vanessa's other spouse, also tried to move forward. He continued his work in San Diego but faced ongoing media attention due to his involvement in the case. He occasionally spoke out about the impact of Vanessa's blackmail on his life, expressing his hope for personal healing and closure. Overall, the aftermath of Vanessa Parker's murder and Josh Parker's trial left deep emotional scars on all involved. The community of Old Saybrook slowly began to recover, with residents coming together to support one another and remember Vanessa. The tragic events had a lasting impact, shaping the lives of those involved for years to come. Carolyn Hershey was a 29-year-old woman with a passion for life and creativity. She was known for her bright smile and warm personality, always ready to make new friends and share her love of photography. Born and raised in San Mateo, California, Carolyn went to the Academy of Art University where she honed her skills in photography. She had a knack for capturing beautiful moments and often posted her work on Instagram, where she had a growing following. Carolyn had a close-knit family. Her younger sister, Jessica, was her best friend, and they shared many adventures together. Their parents, John and Lisa, were supportive and loving, always encouraging their daughters to follow their dreams. Carolyn often talked about her dream of starting a family and building a life filled with love and creativity. In June 2011, Carolyn had just married Gaskell Hershey Jr., a charming and successful man from Macon, Georgia. They chose the Marriott Maui Resort in Hawaii for their honeymoon, a place Carolyn had always wanted to visit. She was excited about the trip and shared her plans on Facebook, posting pictures of the resort and the beautiful Hawaiian scenery. Before her disappearance, Carolyn spent her days exploring the island, taking photographs of the beaches, sunsets, and tropical plants. She visited popular tourist spots like Haleakala National Park and the road to Hana, documenting everything with her camera. She was also excited to try local foods, including poke bowls and shaved ice, and often talked about the delicious meals she had. Carolyn's friends described her as a vibrant and positive person. She had a talent for making people feel special and loved. Her Instagram stories were filled with messages of gratitude and joy, reflecting her optimistic outlook on life. She enjoyed reading, often sharing her thoughts on popular books of the time. She also loved listening to music and was a big fan of artists like Adele and Bruno Mars. As Carolyn embarked on her honeymoon, she was full of hope and excitement for the future. She looked forward to building a life with Gaskell, dreaming of a happy marriage and eventually starting the family. However, her dreams were tragically cut short, leaving her family and friends in deep sorrow and confusion. Carolyn's story is a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. Her vibrant spirit and passion for life left a lasting impact on everyone who knew her. On June 12, 2011, Carolyn Hershey was last seen at the Marriott Maui Resort in Hawaii. The next morning, Linda Chang, a hotel staff member, noticed that Carolyn had missed several scheduled activities. Linda, who had worked at the resort for over 5 years, found this unusual. Carolyn had been enthusiastic about the snorkeling trip and the lure dinner she had signed up for, sharing her excitement with Linda just the day before. Concerned, Linda knocked on the door of Carolyn's room. There was no answer. She waited for a moment, then knocked again, louder this time. Still, there was no response. Linda decided to use her master key to enter the room, following hotel protocol for guest safety. Inside, the room was tidy, with no signs of a struggle. Carolyn's suitcase was still there, along with her camera and some clothes. However, Carolyn and her personal items, like her phone and purse, were missing. Feeling uneasy, Linda reported Carolyn's absence to the hotel management. The manager on duty immediately took action. He called the local police and informed them about the missing guest. By this time, it was late morning, and the sun was high in the sky, casting a bright light over the resort. The police arrived quickly, led by Officer Angelin Cutie Pie Martinez, a seasoned detective known for her thoroughness and attention to detail. She asked Linda to describe what she had found and then started a search of the area. The police questioned hotel staff and guests, hoping to find someone who had seen Carolyn. One guest, Jason Nullstone, staying in the room next to Carolyn's, recalled hearing a loud argument from their room the previous night. He mentioned it to the police, adding that he had seen Gaskell, Carolyn's husband, acting strangely afterward. Meanwhile, Carolyn's husband, Gaskell Hershey, appeared distraught. He told the police he had woken up to find his wife missing and had been searching for her since early morning. His behavior seemed anxious, and he repeatedly insisted that Carolyn must have gone for an early morning swim and gotten lost. Despite an extensive search of the resort grounds and nearby beaches, Carolyn was nowhere to be found. The police broadened their search to the surrounding area, interviewing more witnesses and looking for any clues that might explain her sudden disappearance. As the hours turned into days, the mystery deepened. News of Carolyn's disappearance spread quickly, with local media covering the story. Friends and family from California flew in, desperate for answers. The Marriott Maui Resort, usually a place of joy and relaxation, became the center of a tense and heartbreaking investigation. The police arrived at the Marriott Maui Resort quickly on the morning of June 13, 2011. Leading the team was Detective Mark Kim Linzis, a calm and meticulous investigator known for solving difficult cases. Officer Angelin Cutie Pie Martinez, who was already on the scene, briefed him on what they had learned so far. They knew Carolyn Hershey had been missing for about 24 hours, and time was critical. The room Carolyn shared with her husband Gaskell was their first stop. It looked tidy and undisturbed. The bed was neatly made, their luggage was in place, and nothing seemed out of order. But Detective Kim Linzis noticed Carolyn's camera on the nightstand and her suitcase, partially unpacked. He also noted that some of her personal items, like her phone and purse, were missing, which was strange for someone who had supposedly just gone for a swim. The police used various tools to examine the room. They dusted for fingerprints, looking for any signs of a struggle or someone else's presence. They used luminol to check for traces of blood, but the tests came back clean. Kim Lindsay interviewed Gaskell, who claimed he woke up to find his wife gone. His story seemed rehearsed, and his anxiety was apparent, but there was no direct evidence linking him to her disappearance. Outside the room, police expanded their search to the resort grounds. They interviewed hotel staff and guests. Linda Chang, a hotel employee who first noticed Carolyn's absence, provided a detailed account of what she found when she entered the room. Jason Millstone, the guest next door, reported hearing a loud argument from Carolyn in Gaskell's room the night before. Kim Lindsay and his team also checked the resort's security footage. They saw Carolyn and Gaskell returning to their room around 10 p.m. on June 12th. They were holding hands, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, later footage showed Gaskell leaving the room alone around 3 a.m., looking nervous and hurried. He returned about an hour later, his clothes slightly disheveled. The police continued their search along the nearby beaches, fearing that Carolyn's body might have been washed ashore. They used boats and divers to explore the ocean near the resort but found nothing. The lack of physical evidence made the case even more challenging. Despite the clean crime scene, Detective Kim Lindsay felt that something was off. He knew they needed to dig deeper into the lives of Carolyn and Gaskell. As the investigation continued, the police focused on finding any small detail that could lead them to the truth about what happened to Carolyn Hershey. Gaskell Hershey Jr., 33, became the primary suspect in his wife Carolyn's disappearance. Gaskell, a successful businessman from Macon, Georgia, had charmed many with his good looks and wealth. He and Carolyn had seemed like the perfect couple, especially on social media, where they posted pictures of their wedding and honeymoon. But as the police dug deeper, a different picture of Gaskell began to emerge. Detective Mark Kim Lindsay and Officer Angelin Cutie Pie Martinez started their interrogation of Gaskell at the Marriott Maui Resort. Initially, Gaskell appeared calm and cooperative, insisting he had no idea what had happened to his wife. He claimed they had gone to bed around 10 p.m. after a romantic evening. When he woke up around 6 a.m., Carolyn was gone. He assumed she had gone for an early morning swim, something she loved to do. As the questioning continued, Gaskell's composure began to crack. Detective Kim Lindsay asked about their relationship, and Gaskell's answers became defensive. He admitted they had arguments, which he described as normal marital disagreements. However, friends and family told a different story. They said Gaskell was controlling and possessive, often isolating Carolyn from her friends and family. Further investigation revealed troubling details. Carolyn's sister, Jessica, shared messages where Carolyn expressed fear and uncertainty about her marriage. She described Gaskell's behavior as increasingly erratic. These messages painted a picture of a relationship in turmoil, contrasting sharply with the happy images they projected online. The police also learned about Gaskell's financial troubles. Despite his appearance of wealth, he had significant debts. His business was struggling, and he had taken out several large loans. This raised the possibility that Gaskell had a motive to harm Carolyn, perhaps to gain access to her life insurance or to cover up his financial problems. Detective Kim Lindsay asked Gaskell about the security footage showing him leaving the room at 3 a.m. Gaskell stammered, claiming he went for a walk because he couldn't sleep. His story seemed inconsistent, and his nervous demeanor raised more red flags. Despite his increasingly evasive answers, Gaskell stuck to his story. He maintained that he loved Carolyn and would never harm her. But the more he talked, the more suspicious he seemed. The police decided to keep him under close watch, knowing they needed more evidence to make an arrest. As the investigation into Gaskell continued, the police explored other leads, hoping to uncover the truth about what happened to Carolyn Hershey. Jason Millstone, 31, was the second suspect in the case of Carolyn Hershey's disappearance. Jason, a Canadian YouTuber, was staying at the Marriott Maui Resort in the room next to Carolyn and Gaskell. Jason's YouTube channel, filled with travel adventures and extreme sports, had made him somewhat famous. He was outgoing, friendly, and always looking for his next big story. Detective Mark Kim Lindsay and Officer Angelin Cutie Pie Martinez brought Jason in for questioning. Jason was cooperative and seemed genuinely concerned about Carolyn. He told the detectives about several disturbing encounters he had with Gaskell during his stay at the resort. Jason recounted how Gaskell had approached him several times and asked him for sex, making him feel uncomfortable. On one occasion, Gaskell had dropped his bathrobe and lunged at Jason, an incident that Jason had reported to the hotel staff. The detectives asked Jason about the night Carolyn disappeared. He mentioned hearing loud arguing from their room around midnight. He said it sounded intense, with raised voices and slamming doors. Jason couldn't make out the exact words, but noted that it lasted for about an hour. He didn't think much of it at the time, assuming it was just a typical argument. Jason also told the detectives that Gaskell seemed nervous and agitated the following morning. He saw Gaskell pacing back and forth outside the room, checking his phone frequently. When Jason asked if everything was okay, Gaskell gave a vague response and quickly walked away. The police found Jason's account credible. He seemed genuinely concerned for Carolyn and had no apparent motive to harm her. Jason was known for his adventurous spirit, not for any violent behavior. However, they had to consider all possibilities and asked him about his whereabouts during the critical hours. Jason explained that he had been editing videos in his room and had not left until morning. To verify his alibi, the police checked the hotel's Wi-Fi logs, confirming that Jason had been online during the time in question. They also reviewed security footage which showed Jason entering his room around 10 p.m. and not leaving until 7 a.m. the next day. Despite Jason's disturbing encounters with Gaskell, there was no direct evidence linking him to Carolyn's disappearance. The police continued to investigate other leads, but Jason remained a person of interest due to his proximity and the information he provided. As the investigation progressed, the police were determined to find out the truth and bring justice for Carolyn Hershey. On June 15, 2011, 3 days after Carolyn Hershey disappeared, new evidence came to light. It was a sunny morning with clear skies, typical for Hawaii. A beachgoer found something unusual while walking along the shore near the Marriott Maui resort. She noticed a piece of cloth tangled in the rocks. Upon closer inspection, she realized it was part of a woman's dress. She called the police right away. Detective Mark Kim Linzis and Officer Angelin Cutie Pie Martinez arrived promptly and carefully examined the fabric. It was a torn piece of a floral dress, matching the one Carolyn was last seen wearing. The discovery reignited hope for finding more clues about her disappearance. The police expanded their search area, focusing on the rocky shoreline and nearby waters. They brought in a team of divers to explore the ocean floor, looking for any additional evidence. The search was painstaking and thorough, with divers scanning every inch of the seabed. They used underwater cameras and metal detectors, hoping to find something that could provide answers. Meanwhile, on the shore, forensic experts analyzed the torn dress piece. They carefully bagged and labeled it, noting its exact location. They checked for any bloodstains, fibers, or other traces that could offer more information. The cloth was sent to the lab for further analysis, including tests for DNA and any potential chemical residues. Detective Kim Linzis also revisited the hotel's security footage, focusing on the area around the beach. He noticed a shadowy figure moving near the water around 4 a.m. on the night Carolyn vanished. Although the footage was grainy, it provided a new lead. The police interviewed hotel guests and staff again, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious at that time. The investigation took another turn when Officer Martinez received a tip from the local fisherman, who reported seeing a man near the water early that morning. The description matched Gaskell Hershey. The fisherman said the man appeared to be struggling with something heavy, which he then pushed into the water. With this new information, the police brought Gaskell in for further questioning. His earlier calm demeanor had vanished, replaced by visible anxiety. When confronted with the new evidence, Gaskell became defensive and evasive, denying any involvement and claiming he was being framed. His responses raised even more suspicion. As the lab results came in, they confirmed that the torn dress belonged to Carolyn. The presence of seawater and sand indicated she might have been in the water. This crucial piece of evidence pushed the investigation forward, bringing the police closer to uncovering the truth. Detective Kim Linzis and his team knew they were getting closer. The new evidence provided a clearer picture of what might have happened, and they were determined to solve the mystery of Carolyn Hershey's disappearance. Oliver Kamehameha, 27, was the third suspect in the case of Carolyn Hershey's disappearance. Oliver was a busboy at the Marriott Maui resort, known for his quiet and introverted nature. He had worked at the resort for 2 years and was often described as a hardworking but reserved individual. However, Oliver had a past involving minor drug offenses, specifically marijuana, which made the police take a closer look at him. Detective Mark Kim Linzis and Officer Angelin Cutie Pie Martinez called Oliver in for questioning. Oliver seemed nervous but cooperative. He admitted that he had been having a sexual relationship with Gaskell Hershey, Carolyn's husband. This relationship started just 30 minutes after Gaskell and Carolyn arrived at the resort. Oliver said Gaskell pulled him into a bathroom to have sex while Carolyn was checking in. Oliver explained that he was involved with Gaskell purely for financial reasons. Oliver revealed a critical piece of information. Carolyn had walked in on him and Gaskell just hours before she disappeared. He described the encounter as shocking and tense. Carolyn was visibly upset and stormed out of the room. Oliver said that Gaskell appeared angry and worried after she left. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the investigation. The police asked Oliver about his whereabouts on the night of Carolyn's disappearance. Oliver stated that he had been working late and then went to his apartment, which was nearby. He claimed he had no involvement in Carolyn's disappearance and was only concerned about keeping his job. To verify Oliver's alibi, the police checked the resort's employee logs and interviewed his coworkers. They confirmed that Oliver had finished his shift around midnight. Security footage showed him leaving the resort and heading to his apartment. There was no evidence to suggest he had returned to the resort during the critical hours when Carolyn went missing. Despite Oliver's troubling relationship with Gaskell, the police found no direct evidence linking him to Carolyn's disappearance. His story about the encounter with Carolyn provided a possible motive for Gaskell but did not implicate Oliver directly. His nervous demeanor during questioning was noted, but it could have been due to fear of losing his job and not necessarily guilt. As the investigation continued, the police kept Oliver under surveillance but focused more on Gaskell, whose behavior and inconsistencies were becoming more suspicious. The new information about the encounter between Carolyn, Gaskell, and Oliver added crucial context to the case, helping the police piece together the events leading up to Carolyn's disappearance. Detective Kim Linzis and his team were determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to Carolyn Hershey. On June 20, 2011, the police identified Gaskell Hershey as the murderer of his wife, Carolyn. Gaskell, 33, was a successful businessman from Macon, Georgia. He had a charming personality and came from a wealthy family. However, beneath his polished exterior, Gaskell had a controlling and possessive streak. Friends and family had noticed his erratic behavior leading up to the honeymoon. The motive for the murder became clear as the police pieced together the evidence. Carolyn had discovered Gaskell's secret affair with Oliver Kamehameha, a busboy at the resort. Gaskell, desperate to hide his secret, killed Carolyn to prevent her from exposing him. The couple had argued the night she disappeared, and Gaskell's anger and fear led him to commit the crime. On the morning of June 13, Gaskell was seen on security footage leaving their room at 3 a.m., looking nervous and hurried. He returned an hour later, his clothes disheveled. This was when the police believed he disposed of Carolyn's body in the ocean. The torn piece of her dress found on the shore confirmed this theory. The arrest took place in the early afternoon of June 20. Detective Mark Kim Linzis and Officer Angelin Cutie Pie Martinez, along with a team of officers, approached Gaskell at the Marriott Maui Resort. Gaskell was sitting by the pool, pretending to read a magazine. When the officers approached him, he seemed startled but quickly tried to compose himself. "Gaskell Hershey, you are under arrest for the murder of Carolyn Hershey," Detective Kim Linzis announced. Gaskell's face turned pale, and he started to protest, but the officers quickly cuffed him. He was visibly shaken, realizing that his secrets had caught up with him. As Gaskell was led away, the resort guests watched in shock. News of the arrest spread quickly. Carolyn's family, who had been waiting anxiously for any news, were both relieved and devastated. Jessica, Carolyn's sister, broke down in tears upon hearing that her sister's murderer had been caught. The family had suspected Gaskell but hoped they were wrong. The arrest brought a mix of emotions to Carolyn's friends and family. They were glad that justice was being served, but heartbroken over the loss of Carolyn. The case had attracted national attention, with major news outlets like CNN and the New York Times covering the story. People across the country were shocked by the tragic end of what had seemed like a fairy tale romance. With Gaskell in custody, the police prepared to bring the case to trial, hoping to ensure that Carolyn's murderer would be held accountable for his actions. The trial of Gaskell Hershey began on October 10, 2011. The courtroom was packed with reporters, family members, and curious onlookers. The case had drawn national attention, with news outlets covering every detail. The prosecution was led by Amanda Casatocco, a 45-year-old seasoned prosecutor known for her tough but fair approach. Casatocco presented a strong case, detailing the events leading up to Carolyn's disappearance and the evidence pointing to Gaskell. Casatocco argued that Gaskell had a clear motive to kill his wife. She explained how Carolyn had discovered his affair with Oliver Kamehameha and threatened to expose him. Casatocco showed the security footage of Gaskell leaving his room at 3 a.m. and returning an hour later looking disheveled. She also presented the torn piece of Carolyn's dress found on the shore, which matched the dress she was last seen wearing. The defense was led by Thomas Benihana, a 50-year-old defense attorney known for his smooth-talking and persuasive arguments. Benihana claimed that there was no solid evidence directly linking Gaskell to Carolyn's death. He suggested that Carolyn might have drowned accidentally while swimming early in the morning, as she loved the ocean. Benihana argued that Gaskell was being unfairly targeted due to his relationship with Oliver. The trial lasted 3 weeks, with emotional testimonies from Carolyn's family and friends. Jessica Hershey, Carolyn's sister, gave a tearful statement about her sister's fears and concerns regarding her marriage to Gaskell. The jury was visibly moved by her testimony, and it added a personal touch to the prosecution's case. On November 1, 2011, the jury reached a verdict. Gaskell Hershey was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow. Carolyn's family hugged each other, crying tears of both joy and sadness. They had finally received justice for Carolyn, but the pain of losing her remained. The judge sentenced Gaskell to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Gaskell showed little emotion as the sentence was read, staring blankly ahead. His defense team announced plans to appeal the verdict, but the overwhelming evidence made it unlikely that the decision would be overturned. The sentencing brought a sense of closure to Carolyn's family and friends. While they still mourned her loss, they were grateful that her killer was being held accountable. The trial had been a painful but necessary step in their journey to heal and move forward. The case of Carolyn Hershey remained in the public eye for months, a tragic reminder of how secrets and lies can destroy lives. After the trial, life slowly began to return to normal for those involved, but the impact of Carolyn Hershey's murder lingered. Gaskell Hershey started his life sentence at the maximum security prison in Honolulu. He spent his days in solitary confinement, away from other inmates. His appeals were quickly dismissed, and he became a forgotten figure, his once charming personality now a distant memory. Detective Mark Kim Linzis and Officer Angle and Cutie Pie Martinez received commendations for their work on the case. Their dedication and thorough investigation were crucial in bringing Gaskell to justice. Kim Linzis continued his work with the Maui Police Department, becoming a mentor to younger officers. Martinez, inspired by the case, pursued a degree in forensic science to further her career in law enforcement. Oliver Kamehameha, the buzzboy involved with Gaskell, faced a challenging aftermath. Although he was not charged with any crime, the media attention made it difficult for him to find work. He eventually moved to the mainland and changed his name, trying to leave the past behind. He found solace in working with a local charity that helped troubled youth, hoping to make a positive difference in their lives. Jason Nilstone, the Canadian YouTuber who had reported Gaskell's disturbing behavior, returned to his travels. He posted a video on his channel about the experience, emphasizing the importance of speaking up when witnessing suspicious activities. His followers grew in number, appreciating his bravery and commitment to truth. The Marriott Maui Resort also felt the impact of the crime. The management implemented stricter security measures and offered counseling services to staff affected by the incident. They worked to restore the resort's reputation, ensuring the guests felt safe and secure. In the end, while justice was served, the shadow of Carolyn's tragic death affected everyone involved. Her memory lived on through the efforts of her loved ones, and her story became a reminder of the importance of vigilance and the impact of secrets. Maria Rodarty Sullivan was a vibrant 38-year-old woman known for her artistic talents and kind-hearted nature. She lived in Somerville, South Carolina, a small town known for its charming downtown and the annual Flower Town Festival. Maria worked as a freelance artist, creating beautiful paintings and sculptures that she sold at local art fairs and galleries. Maria lived with her husband, David Sullivan, and her 18-year-old stepson, Tyler. David was a retired naval officer, and they had been married for 10 years. Despite their 20-year age difference, Maria and David were deeply in love. They met at a local art show where Maria's work was being displayed. David was immediately drawn to her creativity and passion for life. Maria tried her best to create a happy and harmonious home. She balanced her freelance work with managing the household and caring for Tyler. She was a motherly figure to Tyler, who had lost his biological mother a few years earlier. Maria and Tyler's relationship was said to be strained, but she remained hopeful that they could eventually bond. In her free time, Maria enjoyed reading and gardening. She was a big fan of classic literature, often quoting Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters. Her garden was filled with vibrant flowers, a testament to her love for nature. Maria was also active in the local community, volunteering at the Somerville Public Library and participating in neighborhood events. In the days leading up to her death, Maria was excited about a new art project. She was working on a series of sculptures inspired by the local wildlife and landscapes of South Carolina. Maria planned to showcase these pieces at the upcoming Flowertown Festival. She was also looking forward to a small family getaway she had planned, hoping it would help mend the strained relationship between her and Tyler. Maria's friends described her as charismatic and friendly. She had a close-knit social circle and was always willing to lend a helping hand. Her friends recalled how Maria would often host dinner parties, cooking delicious meals, and creating a warm, welcoming atmosphere. Despite the challenges in her life, Maria remained optimistic and full of dreams. She hoped to open her own art gallery someday and inspire others with her work. Tragically, her dreams were cut short by a brutal and senseless act of violence. Maria's life was a testament to her resilience and creativity, and her loss was deeply felt by all who knew her. On the morning of September 12, 2012, Somerville was just waking up. It was a cool, clear day, with the sun shining brightly. Around 8:30 a.m., Maria Rodarty Sullivan's neighbor, Lilybeth Carter, walked over to the Sullivan house. Lilybeth, who was 25 years old, lived next door. She often visited Maria to discuss her true crime novel, which she was working on based on real-life events. Lilybeth knocked on the door, but no one answered. She found this odd because Maria was usually up early, working in her art studio. The studio was a small, separate building in the backyard. Lilybeth decided to check there. As she approached the studio, she noticed the door was slightly open. When Lilybeth entered, she was greeted by a horrific scene. Maria was lying on the floor, covered in blood. The room was in chaos, with broken sculptures and shattered glass everywhere. Maria's body showed signs of a violent struggle. Lilybeth was shocked and horrified. Her hands trembled as she quickly dialed 911 on her cell phone. The 911 operator, calming Lilybeth as best they could, instructed her to stay outside and wait for the police. Lilybeth, still in shock, followed the instructions. She stood in the yard, staring at the studio, trying to process what she had just seen. The police arrived within minutes. As they began their investigation, they noted the heavy sculpture near Maria's body. It was clear this was the murder weapon, used to inflict multiple blunt force trauma injuries. The amount of blood and the state of the studio indicated a frenzied attack. Lilybeth was interviewed by the police. She was still shaken but managed to provide a clear account of her morning. She described her relationship with Maria and her reasons for visiting. Her detailed observations helped the investigators piece together the timeline of events leading up to the discovery of Maria's body. The discovery of Maria Rodarty Sullivan's body marked the beginning of a complex and emotional investigation. Her friends and neighbors were left in shock, struggling to understand how such a brutal crime could happen in their peaceful community. When the police arrived at the Sullivan house on the morning of September 12, 2012, they knew they had a serious crime on their hands. It was a sunny day in Somerville, and the peaceful neighborhood was quickly disturbed by the flashing lights and sirens of police cars. Detective Martin Coco, a seasoned investigator known for his thoroughness, led the team. With him was Officer Julia Montes, who was respected for her calm and methodical approach. They had both seen many crime scenes, but the brutality of this one stood out. The art studio where Maria's body was found was a small building in the backyard. As they entered, the detectives were met with a gruesome sight. Blood was splattered on the walls, and the floor was covered with broken sculptures and shattered glass. The room looked like a scene from a horror movie, a far cry from the creative space it usually was. Maria's body lay on the floor, showing signs of a violent struggle. It was clear that she had been beaten to death with a heavy sculpture found nearby. The sculpture was stained with blood, indicating it was the murder weapon. Maria had multiple blunt force trauma injuries, suggesting a frenzied and brutal attack. The police immediately began their investigation. They cordoned off the area to preserve evidence. Detective Coco and Officer Montes carefully examined the crime scene, looking for any clues. They used advanced forensic techniques, including fingerprint dusting and blood pattern analysis, to piece together what had happened. The detectives worked quickly but meticulously. They collected samples of blood and hair for DNA analysis and took photographs of the scene from every angle. They also found a few items that seemed out of place, like a torn piece of cloth and a broken piece of jewelry, which they bagged as evidence. Outside, neighbors gathered, watching with a mix of fear and curiosity. The police asked anyone who had seen or heard anything unusual to come forward. They also conducted door-to-door interviews to gather more information about the hours leading up to the discovery of Maria's body. As the day went on, the police presence grew. Additional officers arrived to help with the investigation, and the media started to gather, drawn by the shocking nature of the crime. News reporters from local stations like WCIV and the Post and Courier began reporting live from the scene, adding to the growing sense of urgency. By the end of the day, the police had gathered a substantial amount of evidence, but many questions remained. Who could have done this, and why? Detective Coco and Officer Montes knew they had a long road ahead, but they were determined to find justice for Maria. David Sullivan, Maria's husband, was the first suspect the police investigated. David, who was 58 years old, had a disciplined and stoic personality, shaped by his years of service in the Navy. He married Maria 10 years ago, providing her with stability and support. Despite his stern exterior, David was deeply in love with Maria and very protective of his family. On September 12, 2012, after the police discovered Maria's body, they brought David in for questioning. Detective Martin Coco and Officer Julia Montes conducted the interview. David appeared calm, but was clearly shaken by the news of his wife's death. He told the detectives that he had been away on a business trip, staying at a Hampton Inn in Boston. He provided hotel receipts and a confirmation of his check-in and check-out times to back up his alibi. David's interview lasted several hours. The detectives asked him about his relationship with Maria and any possible enemies she might have had. David spoke about the tensions between Maria and his son Tyler. He mentioned that Tyler had been acting out since the death of his biological mother and struggled to accept Maria as a mother figure. David believed that despite these challenges, the family would eventually reconcile. The police also searched the Sullivan home for additional evidence. They went through David's belongings and searched his car, but found nothing suspicious. They interviewed David's colleagues and checked his phone records, all of which confirmed his alibi. Throughout the investigation, David maintained his composure. However, the strain was visible. He expressed his grief and disbelief that someone could harm Maria. He was cooperative with the police and provided them with any information they requested. Meanwhile, the local news outlets, such as WCIV and the Post and Courier, reported on the investigation. Neighbors and friends of the Sullivans were shocked to hear that David was a suspect. Many described him as a kind and loving husband who would never harm his wife. Despite his strong alibi, the police continued to investigate David to ensure nothing was overlooked. They re-examined the crime scene and cross-checked all the details of his alibi. Detective Coco and Officer Montes wanted to be thorough, leaving no stone unturned. As days passed, it became clear that David was not involved in Maria's murder. The focus of the investigation shifted to other potential suspects. While David was cleared, the pain of losing Maria and being under suspicion was a heavy burden he had to bear. On September 15, 2012, just 3 days after the discovery of Maria's body, Somerville was covered in a light drizzle. The gray skies matched the somber mood in the town. Around noon, while reviewing the evidence collected from the crime scene, Detective Martin Coco noticed something unusual. Hidden among Maria's art supplies in her studio were dozens of letters. These were not just any letters, but sexually explicit love letters exchanged between Maria and someone else. Detective Coco and Officer Julia Montes carefully read through the letters. The content revealed a secret affair between Maria and an unidentified individual. The letters spoke graphically of secret sex acts and deep, conflicting emotions. This discovery was a significant breakthrough in the case and suggested a possible motive for the murder. Detective Coco called for a meeting with the entire investigative team. They discussed the contents of the letters and the implications, but he knew they had to identify the other person involved in the affair to understand the full context and potential motives. Officer Montes led the effort to gather more information. She visited Maria's close friends and neighbors, asking if anyone knew about the affair. Many were shocked and had no idea Maria was involved with someone other than her husband, David. The news quickly spread through the small, very conservative Southern community, creating a buzz of gossip and speculation. Meanwhile, forensic experts analyzed the letters for fingerprints and DNA evidence. They also checked Maria's phone records and email history to find clues about her secret lover. The investigation was thorough, and every detail was scrutinized. On the same rainy afternoon, while examining Maria's phone, the detectives found a series of explicit text messages and call logs that led them to suspect Tyler, Maria's 18-year-old stepson. The messages hinted at a strained and complicated sexual relationship between Maria and Tyler. Some of the texts were heated, while others were more explicit and graphically described their sexual relationship. Detective Coco and Officer Montes were shocked by this new revelation. Tyler had always been seen as a troubled teenager, but the extent of his relationship with Maria was unexpected. The detectives knew they had to approach this delicately to get to the truth. The discovery of the love letters and text messages shifted the focus of the investigation. The police now had a clearer direction, and the pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together. They prepared to interrogate Tyler again, this time with new, compelling evidence that could unlock the secrets behind Maria's tragic death. Tyler Sullivan, Maria's 18-year-old stepson, became the focus of the investigation after the discovery of the love letters and text messages. Tyler was a troubled teenager, still struggling with the death of his biological mother and the arrival of Maria into his life. He often acted out, showing signs of resentment towards Maria for taking his mother's place. Despite this, he was intelligent and ambitious, with a passion for music. He spent hours playing his guitar, dreaming of becoming a famous musician. On September 16, 2012, Tyler was brought in for questioning. Detective Martin Coco and Officer Julia Montes conducted the interview. Tyler appeared nervous but tried to remain calm. The detectives began by asking him about his relationship with Maria. Tyler admitted that their relationship was strained, but denied any involvement in her murder. When the detectives presented the love letters, Tyler's demeanor changed. He became visibly upset and defensive. He confessed to the affair, explaining that they started having sex about a year ago. Tyler said he became obsessed with Maria, believing that they could be together if his father David were out of the picture. However, Maria tried to end the affair and focus on her marriage, which frustrated Tyler. The detectives pressed Tyler for more details. They asked him about the night of Maria's murder. Tyler claimed he was at a friend's house, watching movies. The police checked his alibi, but it was weak and lacked concrete evidence. His friend Jake said Tyler was with him, but couldn't remember specific details or times. Tyler's reaction to the interrogation was a mix of anger and fear. He was defensive and argumentative, denying any involvement in the murder while expressing his frustration over Maria ending the affair. The detectives noted his conflicting emotions, which seemed to oscillate between sadness and anger. While Tyler was a prime suspect, the police needed more evidence to link him directly to the crime. They continued to analyze the physical evidence from the crime scene and cross-referenced it with Tyler's statements. The detectives also reviewed security camera footage from the neighborhood, hoping to find any inconsistencies in Tyler's alibi. The investigation into Tyler was intense and thorough. Detective Thompson and Officer Montes were determined to uncover the truth. They knew Tyler had a motive, but they needed solid evidence to prove his involvement. The love letters and text messages were crucial, but they had to build a strong case. The investigation was far from over, and the detectives continued to piece together the puzzle. Tyler remained a key figure in the case, and the police were determined to find justice for Maria. Lilybeth Carter, the Sullivans' 25-year-old neighbor, became another person of interest in the investigation. Lilybeth lived next door and frequently visited the Sullivan house. She had a keen interest in true crime stories and was working on a novel based on real-life events. Lilybeth was known for her observant nature and was often seen taking notes and photos around the neighborhood. On September 17, 2012, the police brought Lilybeth in for questioning. Detective Martin Coco and Officer Julia Montes conducted the interview. Lilybeth appeared calm and cooperative. She explained that she had a passion for writing and was fascinated by true crime. She often visited Maria to discuss her novel and get feedback on her writing. The detectives asked Lilybeth about the morning she discovered Maria's body. Lilybeth recounted the events in detail, describing how she found the studio door slightly open and discovered Maria lying on the floor. She spoke about her shock and horror and how she immediately called 911. The detectives noted that Lily Beth's account was consistent with the initial report. As the questioning continued, the detectives probed deeper into Lily Beth's relationship with the Sullivans. Lily Beth admitted that she often observed the family dynamics, noting the tension between Maria and Tyler. She also mentioned that she had seen Tyler acting suspiciously on several occasions, but didn't think much of it at the time. The detectives asked Lily Beth about her interest in true crime and whether it influenced her actions. Lily Beth explained that her interest was purely academic and creative. She was writing a novel and used her observations to create realistic characters and scenarios. She denied any involvement in Maria's murder and insisted that she was just a concerned neighbor. Lily Beth's calm and cooperative demeanor made it difficult for the detectives to determine if she was hiding anything. They decided to search her house for any evidence that might link her to the crime. They found several notebooks filled with detailed observations about the neighborhood and the Sullivans, but nothing directly incriminating. Despite her cooperation, Lily Beth remained a person of interest. The detectives continued to monitor her closely, looking for any inconsistencies in her story. They also reviewed the security footage from the neighborhood, hoping to find any evidence that could either implicate or clear her. As the investigation into Lily Beth continued, the detectives faced the challenge of distinguishing between her genuine interest in true crime and any potential involvement in Maria's death. The complexity of the case deepened, but the police remained committed to finding the truth and bringing justice for Maria. On September 20, 2012, the investigation took a significant turn. Detective Martin Coco and Officer Julia Montes had gathered enough evidence to identify the murderer. The evidence pointed to Tyler Sullivan, Maria's 18-year-old stepson. Tyler's conflicting emotions and erratic behavior had raised suspicions from the start, but it was the discovery of his fingerprints on the murder weapon that sealed his fate. Tyler was known to be a troubled teenager. He struggled with the recent death of his biological mother and resented Maria for taking her place. Despite his intelligence and passion for music, Tyler's feelings for Maria had evolved into a dangerous mix of hatred and desire. When Maria confronted him about his failing grades and her decision to end their secret affair, Tyler snapped. In a fit of rage and obsession, he attacked her with a heavy sculpture from her studio. The detectives had pieced together the events of that fateful day. Tyler had been at the house, waiting for the right moment. When Maria entered the studio, he followed her. The confrontation escalated quickly, and in his fury, Tyler grabbed the sculpture and struck Maria multiple times, leading to her death. With the evidence in hand, the police prepared to arrest Tyler. On the evening of September 20, they arrived at the Sullivan home. Tyler was in his room, listening to music on his iPod. When the officers entered, Tyler seemed surprised but didn't resist arrest. He was handcuffed and taken to the police station for processing. David Sullivan, Tyler's father, was devastated by the news. He couldn't believe that his son was capable of such a brutal act. The family was torn apart by the revelation, and the community was equally shocked. Neighbors and friends who had known Tyler as a quiet, troubled teen now saw him in a completely different light. The police detailed the evidence during a press conference, explaining how Tyler's obsession with Maria and his inability to control his emotions led to the murder. The discovery of the sexually explicit letters and Tyler's fingerprints on the murder weapon were critical pieces of the puzzle that helped solve the case. As Tyler was taken away, his reaction was a mix of anger and resignation. He knew the evidence against him was overwhelming, and there was no escape from the consequences of his actions. Maria's friends and family were relieved that the murderer had been caught, but the pain of losing Maria remained. The arrest of Tyler Sullivan brought some closure to the case, but the journey to justice was far from over. The next step was the trial, where the full extent of Tyler's actions and motives would be revealed. The trial of Tyler Sullivan began on November 5, 2012, in Summerville, South Carolina. The courtroom was filled with reporters, friends, and family members, all eager to hear the details of the case. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney James Bliver, a seasoned lawyer known for his tenacity and thoroughness. He was 45 years old, with a stern demeanor that commanded respect. Bliver argued that Tyler's obsession with Maria, coupled with his anger over her ending their affair, led him to commit the brutal murder. He presented the love letters, text messages, and the forensic evidence linking Tyler to the crime. The prosecution's case was solid, painting a clear picture of Tyler's motive and actions. The defense was handled by public defender Sarah Jane Lemon, a compassionate and determined attorney who had been practicing law for over 20 years. She was 42 years old and known for her dedication to her clients. Lemon argued that Tyler was a troubled teenager who had been deeply affected by his mother's death and was struggling with mental health issues. She claimed that Tyler's actions were not premeditated but a result of emotional turmoil and confusion. Throughout the trial, the emotional toll on Maria's family was evident. Her husband, David Sullivan, sat in the front row, his face etched with grief and disbelief. Friends and family members wept quietly as they listened to the details of Maria's tragic death. After several weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury deliberated for 2 days. On December 3, 2012, they returned with a verdict. Tyler Sullivan was found guilty of second-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the verdict. Tyler showed little emotion, his face blank as he listened to his fate. The sentencing took place on December 10, 2012. Tyler was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge stated that while Tyler's actions were driven by emotional distress, the brutality of the crime warranted a severe punishment. The sentence aimed to provide justice for Maria and her family while acknowledging Tyler's troubled background. Maria's family had mixed reactions to the sentence. Some felt it was too lenient, given the nature of the crime, while others believed it was a fair balance between justice and compassion for Tyler's mental state. The community of Somerville was left to grapple with the aftermath of the tragedy, hoping to find some sense of closure. The trial and sentencing of Tyler Sullivan were widely covered by local media, including WCIV and the Post and Courier. The case served as a somber reminder of the impact of emotional and mental health issues and the devastating consequences they can have. After Tyler Sullivan was sentenced to 25 years in prison, life in Somerville, South Carolina, began to slowly move forward. The trial had been a traumatic experience for everyone involved, leaving lasting impacts on the community. David Sullivan, Maria's husband, struggled to cope with the loss of his wife and the imprisonment of his son. He took a leave of absence from his job and sought counseling to deal with his grief and the overwhelming sense of betrayal. Friends and neighbors provided support, but David often felt isolated. He decided to move to Charleston to start fresh, away from the painful memories in Somerville. Tyler's incarceration was a difficult adjustment for him as well. He was sent to a state correctional facility where he began receiving psychological counseling. The prison system offered educational programs, and Tyler enrolled in classes to complete his high school education and began studying music theory, still clinging to his dream of becoming a musician someday. Lilybeth Carter, the neighbor and true crime enthusiast, was deeply affected by the entire ordeal. She continued to write her novel, now incorporating the harrowing experience she had lived through. The local media, including WCIV and the Post and Courier, feature interviews with Lilybeth, discussing her perspective on the case. Despite the unwanted attention, Lilybeth remained focused on her writing, finding solace in her creative work. Detective Martin Coco and Officer Julia Montes, the lead investigators, received commendations for their diligent work in solving the case. The success of their investigation reinforced their commitment to justice and the importance of thorough police work. The case also highlighted the need for increased support for mental health issues, both within families and the broader community. Life in Somerville gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the memory of Maria Rodarty Sullivan and the tragic events that unfolded remained etched in the hearts of those who knew her. The town's resolve to support mental health initiatives and honor Maria's legacy became a lasting tribute to her life.
Bethany Montauk, age 36, was a dedicated and passionate high school English teacher residing in Wilmington, Delaware. Known for her kindness and creativity in the classroom, Bethany was admired by both her students and colleagues. Her unwavering commitment to helping others made her a beloved figure in the community. Despite facing personal challenges in her marriage, Bethany maintained a positive outlook and strived to make a difference in the lives of those around her. She dedicated her days to shaping young minds, always going the extra mile to ensure her students received the best education possible. Outside of the classroom, Bethany's love for wine led her to explore the local vineyards in Delaware. She would spend her weekends visiting wineries, immersing herself in the rich history and culture of the region's wine production. She became well-versed in the different grape varieties, fermentation processes, and the art of pairing wine with food. She had an impressive knowledge of various wine brands and was something of a wine connoisseur. Unfortunately, as many teachers in America know, Her passion for teaching was not enough to pay the bills, and so she worked as a sommelier at a local upscale restaurant in downtown Wilmington to make ends meet, showcasing her passion for wine and providing recommendations to patrons. April of 2002 was a time of excitement and anticipation for Bethany. She had been selected to attend a prestigious education conference in New York City, where she would have the opportunity to connect with other educators and learn from experts in her field. This conference was highly regarded in the education community, and Bethany saw it as a chance to enhance her teaching skills and bring fresh ideas back to her students. Little did Bethany know that she would never go to this conference, would never go anywhere again. A tragic turn of events that would forever change the lives of those who knew and loved her. The investigation into her death would uncover a web of secrets and hidden motives, revealing a side of Bethany's life that no one could have imagined. On a fateful day in April 2002, the lifeless body of Bethany Montauk, a beloved high school English teacher, was discovered in her residence located in Wilmington, Delaware. The date, forever etched in the minds of those involved in the investigation, was April 10th. The weather on that day was mild, with a gentle breeze sweeping through the streets of Wilmington as the city buzzed with the anticipation of the upcoming Easter holiday. It was early morning when tragedy struck the Montauk household. Bethany's husband, Mark Anthony Montauk, stumbled upon a scene that would forever haunt him. Shock and disbelief washed over him as he entered their home and discovered the lifeless body of his beloved wife. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant sound of birds chirping outside. The authorities were immediately alerted, and a team of seasoned detectives from the Wilmington Police Department swiftly arrived at the Montauk residence. The entire house was cordoned off, and the investigation quickly gained media attention, with local news outlets such as the Wilmington Gazette and Channel 8 News reporting on the shocking crime. Neighbors, friends, and colleagues of Bethany Montauk were left in a state of disbelief and grief. The tight-knit community rallied together, holding candlelight vigils and organizing fundraisers to support Bethany's grieving family. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the city of Wilmington, leaving its residents on edge and desperate for answers. As the investigation unfolded, the police remained tight-lipped about the details surrounding Bethany's murder. Rumors began to circulate, with some speculating that the crime was a result of a botched robbery, while others believed it to be a targeted attack. The uncertainty and fear that gripped the community were palpable, as everyone wondered who could commit such a heinous act against a beloved teacher. The police wasted no time in responding to the distressing discovery of Bethany Montauk's lifeless body. On that fateful April day in 2002, the investigators arrived at the Montauk residence with a sense of urgency, ready to unravel the truth behind this heinous crime. Detective Sarah Anders and Detective James Anders, the famous husband and wife team of the Wilmington Police, known for their meticulous approach to investigations, took charge of the case. They were determined to bring justice to Bethany and her grieving loved ones. As they entered the crime scene, the sense of foreboding hung in the air. The Montauk residence, once a place of warmth and laughter, now stood as a haunting reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. The investigators carefully observed their surroundings,
noting every detail that could potentially lead them closer to the truth. Traces of blood stained the walls and floor, a chilling testament to the violence that had taken place. Signs of a struggle were evident, with overturned furniture and shattered glass scattered throughout the room. It was clear that Bethany had fought for her life, leaving behind a harrowing scene for the investigators to piece together. One crucial piece of evidence stood out amongst the chaos: a glass of Chardonnay wine. The investigators suspected that this innocent-looking beverage had been used as the murder weapon. The toxic substance that tainted the wine was identified as deadly cyanide, a potent poison that could swiftly end a life. The investigators meticulously collected every possible clue, ensuring that no detail went unnoticed. They dusted for fingerprints, carefully bagged and labeled potential evidence, and photographed the crime scene from every angle. The room was meticulously combed for any trace of the perpetrator, any hint that would lead them closer to solving this chilling mystery. As the investigation progressed, the detectives reached out to experts in forensic science. They employed advanced techniques, analyzing the wine glass for DNA, fingerprints, and any other trace evidence that could link the killer to the crime. The clock was ticking, and the pressure to solve the case grew with each passing day. The investigation into the murder of Bethany Montauk captivated the attention of the local community and garnered media coverage. News outlets such as the Wilmington Gazette and the Delaware Times reported on the progress of the investigation, keeping the public informed and engaged in the search for justice. With each passing day, the detectives inched closer to uncovering the truth behind Bethany's tragic demise. They knew that time was of the essence, and they were determined to bring the perpetrator to justice. In the investigation of the shocking murder of beloved high school English teacher Bethany Montauk, the police turned their attention to her husband, Mark Anthony Montauk. Mark, a 38-year-old, presented himself as a successful investment banker, but beneath his bland and pleasant facade lurked a web of secrets. Detectives Sarah Anders and James Anders, a husband and wife team known for their meticulous approach to solving crimes, suspected that Mark had a motive to eliminate Bethany. It was discovered that Mark had a life insurance policy worth a staggering $300,000 on his wife, raising eyebrows and leading investigators to delve deeper into his financial motivations. During the intense interrogation, Mark's emotions fluctuated between anger and calmness as he vehemently denied any involvement in his wife's murder. The detectives skillfully probed his alibi, scrutinizing the events leading up to the fateful day of Bethany's death. To establish a timeline, the detectives meticulously gathered evidence from various sources. They interviewed neighbors who reported hearing heated arguments between Mark and Bethany in the weeks leading up to the murder. The couple's financial records were examined, revealing a pattern of excessive spending and mounting debt. It was discovered that Bethany's teaching job, though highly regarded, did not provide sufficient income, leading her to work as a sommelier to make ends meet. As the investigation progressed, the detectives uncovered a disturbing connection between Mark and a local wine distributor. Records showed that Mark had been purchasing a particular brand of Chardonnay, the same brand found at the crime scene. This discovery raised suspicions that Mark may have tampered with the wine, lacing it with deadly cyanide. To bolster their case, the investigators sought the assistance of forensic experts. The toxicology report confirmed the presence of cyanide in Bethany's system, further strengthening the suspicion against Mark. The detectives also analyzed Mark's financial records, uncovering a series of questionable transactions that pointed to a desperate need for money. With the weight of evidence mounting against Mark, the investigators were determined to bring justice to Bethany and her grieving community. But as they delved deeper into the twisted web of secrets surrounding the Montauk marriage, they would soon discover that there was more to this case than met the eye. Laura Bascule-Groves, a 26-year-old sex education teacher at the same high school where Bethany Montauk worked, has emerged as the second suspect in the investigation. Laura, known for her outgoing personality and rapier wit, was a familiar face among the students and staff. However, beneath her friendly demeanor, a deep-seated hatred towards Bethany simmered, fueled by a secret affair with Bethany's husband, Mark Anthony Montauk. The police wasted no time in bringing Laura in for questioning. The interrogation room was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. Detective Sarah Anders, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for her relentless pursuit of the truth, sat across from Laura. Detective Anders skillfully probed Laura's involvement in the murder, carefully dissecting her every response. Laura's initial reaction to the accusations was one of anger. She vehemently denied any knowledge of Bethany's murder, her voice filled with outrage. "I would never do something so heinous," she exclaimed, her eyes flashing with defiance. However, as the interrogation progressed, cracks began to appear in Laura's facade. With her back against the wall, Laura's denials grew weaker. She attempted to distance herself from the murder, claiming that her affair with Mark had ended months before Bethany's tragic demise. However, the detectives were not easily swayed by her words. They had uncovered a trove of sexually explicit text messages exchanged between Laura and Mark during the time leading up to the murder, revealing their continued sexual involvement. As the interrogation drew to a close, Laura's demeanor shifted from anger to desperation. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the gravity of her situation. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered, her voice filled with remorse. The detectives remained stoic, their focus unwavering.
The investigation into Laura Basco-Groves' involvement in Bethany Montauk's murder continued. The truth, like a jigsaw puzzle, slowly began to take shape. The question remained, would Laura's secrets be enough to unravel the mystery surrounding Bethany's tragic demise? In the perplexing case of Bethany Montauk's murder, the investigation took an unexpected turn when a seemingly unassuming neighbor, Daniel Logan, emerged as the third suspect. At the age of 72, Daniel was a widower known for his reserved nature and meticulous attention to detail. Living in the same suburban neighborhood as the Montauks, he had been quietly observing their lives, unbeknownst to them. The police, led by the determined husband and wife team of Detective Sarah Anders and Detective James Anders, brought Daniel in for questioning. The interrogation room was dimly lit, creating an atmosphere of suspense and intrigue. Daniel sat calmly, his demeanor betraying no signs of guilt or nervousness. As the detectives delved deeper into their line of questioning, Daniel revealed a shocking motive rooted in blackmail. It appeared that he had stumbled upon a dark secret of Mark Anthony Montauk, Bethany's husband. Mark, a seemingly successful investment banker, had been leading a double life, engaging in extramarital affairs behind Bethany's back. Daniel claimed that Mark had approached him, offering him sex in exchange for his silence. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation as it hinted at a complex web of deceit and betrayal. The detectives meticulously probed Daniel for further details, seeking to uncover the truth behind this sordid affair. Despite the gravity of the situation, Daniel remained composed throughout the interrogation. His calmness added an air of mystery to his involvement in the case. The detectives, determined to uncover every piece of evidence, carefully cross-referenced Daniel's statements with other testimonies and physical evidence collected from the crime scene. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives discovered that Daniel had been keeping a detailed journal, meticulously documenting every interaction he had witnessed between Mark and Laura Basco-Groves, the second suspect. This journal became a crucial piece of evidence, shedding light on the intricate dynamics between the three individuals. With each page turned, the detectives pieced together a timeline of events, connecting Mark's illicit affair with Laura to the murder of Bethany. The journal entries revealed clandestine meetings, secret phone calls, and coded messages exchanged between the two suspects. The investigation into Daniel's involvement in the case continued, as the detectives sought to determine the extent of his knowledge and potential role in the murder. The evidence gathered thus far pointed to a web of secrets, lies, and manipulation, leaving the detectives eager to uncover the full truth. In a shocking turn of events, the truth behind the heinous murder of beloved high school English teacher Bethany Montauk had finally been revealed. After months of tireless investigation, the police identified and arrested the murderer, bringing an end to a dark chapter in the history of Wilmington, Delaware. The mastermind behind this sinister plot was none other than Bethany's husband, Mark Anthony Montauk. The 38-year-old, who presented himself as a successful investment banker, was never an actual investment banker. He had never held a job, never even went to college. In fact, he was a high school dropout and functionally illiterate. His web of lies and deceit began to unravel when the police discovered his dark secret. Driven by a toxic combination of greed, fear, and deception, Mark orchestrated a twisted and frantic plan to keep Bethany from learning the truth about his fraudulent life. In a desperate bid to silence her forever, he poisoned her with a glass of Chardonnay wine laced with deadly cyanide. This chilling act of betrayal sent shockwaves through the community, leaving friends, family, and colleagues in disbelief. But Mark was not acting alone. Another key player in this tragic tale was Laura Basco-Groves, a 26-year-old sex education teacher at the same high school where Bethany worked. Laura, driven by a deep-seated hatred and a secret affair with Mark, manipulated him into carrying out the murder. In her quest to eliminate her romantic rival and claim Mark for herself, she used his dark secrets as leverage. The police, led by the dedicated husband and wife team of Detective Sarah Anders and Detective James Anders, painstakingly pieced together the puzzle that led to the arrest of both Mark and Laura. With unwavering determination, they meticulously collected evidence, interviewed witnesses, and analyzed forensic data. The arrest of Mark Montauk left the community stunned. The facade of a successful investment banker crumbled, revealing a man consumed by fear and deceit. The arrest of Laura Bascule-Groves added another layer of shock, as her friendly demeanor masked a sinister and calculating mind. As news of the arrest spread, the community of Wilmington breathed a collective sigh of relief. The dark cloud of uncertainty that had hung over them for months was finally dissipating. The memory of Bethany Montauk, a dedicated and beloved teacher, will forever be etched in their hearts. The trial that followed the arrest of Mark Montauk gripped the community of Wilmington, Delaware in April of 2004. District Attorney Emil Borko, the seasoned prosecutor known for his tenacity, presented a compelling case against the accused. The courtroom was filled with tension as the prosecution meticulously laid out the evidence, painting a vivid picture of the heinous crime that had taken place. The defense attorney, Mark J. Castlebreath, fought vigorously to cast doubt on the evidence presented by the prosecution. Castlebreath, known for his sharp legal mind, argued that there were inconsistencies in the timeline of events and questioned the credibility of some of the witnesses. He attempted to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors, urging them to consider alternative theories. The trial lasted for several days, with both the prosecution and defense presenting their arguments and calling witnesses to the stand. The jury, composed of 12 individuals from various walks of life, carefully listened to the testimonies and examined the evidence. They deliberated for hours, weighing the facts and the arguments presented before reaching their verdict. Finally, the moment arrived. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the jury foreperson stood up to deliver the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Mark Anthony Montauk, guilty of the murder of Bethany Montauk, the foreperson announced, her voice steady and resolute. Gasps of disbelief echoed through the courtroom as the reality of the verdict sank in. The sentencing phase of the trial commenced shortly after the guilty verdict was announced.
The prosecution argued for a harsh punishment, citing the brutal nature of the crime and the devastating impact it had on the victim's family and the community. The defense, on the other hand, pleaded for leniency, highlighting Mark's lack of a criminal record and his potential for rehabilitation. After careful consideration, the judge handed down the sentence. Mark Montauk would serve a term of 5 years in prison. The courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions, with some expressing relief and others feeling that the sentence was too lenient given the gravity of the crime. As the trial came to a close, the impact of the verdict rippled through the lives of Bethany's friends and family, forever altering their perception of the justice system. They found solace in the fact that the person responsible for Bethany's untimely death would be held accountable, but the pain of their loss would never fully heal. After the trial concluded, the lives of everyone involved in the Bethany Montauk murder case took divergent paths. The suspects, police investigators, and family members were left to grapple with the aftermath of the heinous crime that shook the tight-knit community of Wilmington, Delaware in April of 2002. Mark Anthony Montauk, the convicted murderer, was sentenced to 5 years in prison with the possibility of parole. His once charming facade crumbled as the truth about his deceitful nature came to light during the trial. With his dark secret exposed, he became a pariah, shunned by the community that had once held him in high regard. The Montauk residence, once a symbol of a seemingly idyllic life, now stood as a haunting reminder of the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. Laura Bascule-Groves, the co-conspirator in the murder plot, faced a different fate. Her involvement in the crime tarnished her reputation as a respected educator. The revelation of her manipulative actions left her isolated and ostracized from the community she had once been a part of. Seeking redemption, after her prison sentence of 10 months, she relocated to Orlando, Florida, hoping to start anew and leave behind the dark past that haunted her. As the years passed, the scars left by the Bethany Montauk murder case began to heal, albeit slowly. The community gradually moved forward, determined to not let the darkness overshadow the resilience and spirit that defined Wilmington. The case served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing those we hold dear. The case of Bethany Montauk's murder serves as a chilling reminder of the depths to which human nature can sink. It highlights the importance of uncovering the truth, no matter how hidden or complex it may be. Our story begins with Olive Parker, a 32-year-old ambitious and driven marketing executive who resided in the upscale neighborhood of Las Olas in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, not far from the Atlantic Ocean. She was known for her intelligence and charming personality, captivating everyone she met. Olive's dedication to her career was unwavering, and she aspired to climb the corporate ladder and make a name for herself in the marketing industry. In July of 2012, the sun-drenched city of Fort Lauderdale buzzed with excitement as Olive's life took an unexpected turn. As the summer heat intensified, Olive's days were filled with meetings at the prestigious marketing firm she worked for, where she tirelessly strategized and executed successful campaigns for renowned brands such as Coca-Cola and Nike. Despite her professional success, Olive's personal life was not without its challenges. Married to Adam Parker, a charismatic and enigmatic man, she told friends their seemingly idyllic relationship, which had once been filled with love and happiness, was now full of cracks and nearing its end. Olive's friends and colleagues noticed a change in her demeanor. The once vibrant and confident woman seemed to be slowly fading away, replaced by a shadow of her former self. Whispers of a troubled marriage and a controlling husband circulated, with rumors of infidelity and deceit. Olive, however, remained steadfast in her commitment to maintaining harmony and balance in her life. Little did Olive know that her pursuit of success and happiness would lead her down a treacherous path. As we dig deeper into the case, we will uncover the shocking events that unfolded, ultimately leading to Olive's tragic demise. It was a scorching hot and humid day in the summer of 2012, the kind of day where the air felt heavy and suffocating. The residents of Las Olas, a posh neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, sought refuge from the searing heat in their air-conditioned homes. On this particular steamy night, the tranquility of the neighborhood was shattered by an eerie commotion emanating from Olive Parker's apartment. The sound of screams and shouting pierced the air, causing concern among the neighbors. One neighbor, Patty Reyes de Leon, a retired schoolteacher known for her nosiness, couldn't ignore the disturbing sounds any longer. She peered through her lace curtains, her curiosity piqued. As she strained to see what was happening, she noticed the front door of Olive's apartment was ajar. Mrs. Reyes de Leon's heart raced as she contemplated the possibility of danger. She hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks of getting involved. But her conscience won over, and she decided to investigate. With a sense of trepidation, Mrs. Reyes de Leon stepped out of her air-conditioned sanctuary and made her way towards Olive's apartment. The oppressive heat seemed to intensify as she approached the door, adding to her unease. As she entered the apartment, a wave of stifling heat hit her, causing sweat to bead on her forehead. The living room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn shut, creating an atmosphere of gloom and mystery. Mrs. Reyes de Leon's eyes were immediately drawn to the corpse sprawled on the floor. It was Olive Parker, her once vibrant and ambitious neighbor. The shock of the sight overwhelmed her, and she let out a shriek. Olive lay motionless, her body twisted in an unnatural position. Her once lustrous hair now clung to her sweat-soaked face. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant hum of the air-conditioning unit. Mrs. Reyes de Leon's hands trembled as she reached for her phone to dial 911. The dispatcher's voice on the other end was calm and reassuring, but the gravity of the situation hung heavy in the air. Within minutes, the police arrived at the scene, their sirens wailing in the distance. They cordoned off the area, keeping the curious onlookers at bay. Forensic experts meticulously combed through the apartment, collecting evidence and documenting every detail. News of Olive's tragic demise spread like wildfire through the community. The local newspapers and television stations picked up the story, captivating audiences with the chilling details of the mysterious death. Las Olas, once a haven of tranquility, was now engulfed in a cloud of fear and suspicion. Who could have done such a heinous act? Was it someone Olive knew? Or was this a random act of violence that shattered the illusion of safety? The police arrived quickly, showing how serious the situation was. Detective Suarez, who was in charge, and his team carefully looked through the crime scene. They wanted to find any clues that could help them understand how Olive died. The apartment was very clean, which made it even more mysterious. There were no signs that someone broke in. The only sign of violence was Olive's lifeless body on the floor. She had been strangled to death, Detective Suarez started by taking pictures of everything in the apartment. He wanted to make sure he didn't miss anything important. Then, he and his team started searching for fingerprints. They dusted for prints on doorknobs, windows, and other surfaces. They hoped to find a clue that would lead them to the person who killed Olive. While searching, Detective Suarez noticed something strange. There was a broken vase on the floor near Olive's body. He wondered if it had something to do with the crime. He carefully collected the broken pieces and put them in a bag for further investigation. Next, Detective Suarez checked Olive's iPhone and computer. He wanted to see if there were any messages or emails that could be helpful. He found a few text messages from someone named Sophia. Mark seemed angry and jealous. Detective Suarez thought Sophia might be a suspect. Detective Suarez and his team also talked to Olive's neighbors. They wanted to know if anyone saw or heard anything unusual on the day Olive died. One neighbor said they heard loud arguing and screaming coming from Olive's apartment. Another neighbor said they saw a man leaving the building around the same time. Detective Suarez asked for a description of the man and made a note of it. As the investigation continued, Detective Suarez knew he had a lot of work ahead of him. He had to analyze all the evidence and interview possible suspects. He hoped that by doing this, he would be able to bring justice to Olive and her family. Olive's husband, Adam Parker, was suspected of being involved in the shocking death of his wife. Adam, 35, was a lawyer who specialized in traffic accidents, a job often referred to as an ambulance chaser. He was known for his smooth talking and ability to convince people to work with him. However, behind his charming facade, Adam had deep-rooted insecurities and feelings of inadequacy. Adam's behavior towards Olive had raised concerns among their friends and family. He was possessive and often displayed signs of jealousy. Friends remembered instances where Adam would become angry if Olive talked to other men at social events. He would constantly check her phone and email, searching for any signs of infidelity. These possessive tendencies had intensified in the months leading up to Olive's tragic death. The police interrogated Adam extensively, hoping to uncover the truth behind Olive's demise. They questioned him about his whereabouts on the day of the incident and his relationship with Olive. Adam claimed to have been at work during the time of the crime, but the police were determined to verify his alibi. Detective Suarez and his team meticulously examined Adam's phone records, searching for any evidence that could support or refute his claims. They also interviewed Olive's colleagues and friends, hoping to uncover any information that could shed light on their troubled marriage. As the investigation progressed, the police discovered a series of text messages between Adam and a mysterious woman. The messages hinted at a secret affair, providing a possible motive for Olive's murder. The police obtained a search warrant for Adam's office and home, hoping to find further evidence to corroborate their suspicions. Inside Adam's office, the police found a hidden compartment in his desk containing love letters and intimate photographs of him and another woman. The discovery of this secret relationship sent shockwaves through the community and added another layer of complexity to the case. The investigation into Olive's murder was far from over. The police had uncovered a web of deceit, betrayal, and jealousy surrounding Adam and Olive's marriage. As they delved deeper into the case, they would soon discover more shocking revelations that would turn this tragic story into a true crime nightmare. Sophia Shingrix, a 28-year-old graphic designer, found herself under the scrutinizing gaze of the police as they delved deeper into the mysterious death of Olive Parker. Sophia, known for her vibrant personality and creative flair, had worked alongside Olive at a prominent marketing agency in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. As the investigation unfolded, detectives discovered a tangled web of secrets and hidden desires. Sophia had always admired Olive's intelligence and ambition,
but beneath her friendly facade, jealousy and resentment simmered. The police were determined to uncover any motive Sophia may have had for harming Olive. During the interrogation, Sophia's nervous demeanor betrayed her inner turmoil. She hesitantly admitted to a secret romance with Olive's husband, Adam Parker. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation, adding
a new layer of complexity to the case. Adam, a successful lawyer known for his charm, had been leading a double life. Behind closed doors, he engaged in a clandestine affair with Sophia, betraying the trust of his devoted wife. The police were astounded by this revelation as it shed light on the possible motive behind Olive's tragic end. Sophia's involvement in the affair only intensified the suspicion surrounding her. Could her feelings of jealousy and resentment have driven her to commit the ultimate act of betrayal? The detectives meticulously combed through phone records, text messages, and email exchanges, searching for any evidence that could link Sophia to the crime. The investigation took a dramatic turn when the police uncovered a series of passionate and explicit messages exchanged between Sophia and Adam. These messages revealed a toxic love triangle filled with deceit and manipulation. The detectives realized that Sophia's motive may have been fueled by a desire to eliminate Olive, removing the obstacle standing between her and Adam. As the investigation continued, the police dug deeper into Sophia's background, uncovering a troubled past marred by failed relationships and a history of emotional instability. They interviewed friends, colleagues, and acquaintances, gathering insights into her character and behavior. But the truth remained elusive. The investigation into Sophia's involvement in Olive's death continued, as the police meticulously pieced together the puzzle of this twisted tale. The evidence was mounting, but would it be enough to prove her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? As the investigation into Olive Parker's tragic death unfolded, the police were determined to leave no stone unturned. Their relentless pursuit of the truth led them to a breakthrough when a curious teenager stumbled upon an abandoned phone in a remote part of Fort Lauderdale. Little did they know that this unexpected discovery would hold the key to unraveling the mystery surrounding Olive's demise. The phone, an outdated model with a cracked screen, was carefully examined by the forensic team. They meticulously extracted every piece of information. The phone's call logs and text messages became the focus of their attention as they sought to uncover any connections to the prime suspects in the case. One particular text chain caught their eye. It was a series of exchanges between an unknown number and Adam Parker, Olive's husband. The messages hinted at a secret arrangement, with Adam offering financial support in exchange for sexual favors. The police were intrigued, realizing that this could be the missing piece of the puzzle they had been searching for. Further analysis of the phone's data revealed a hidden folder containing explicit photographs and videos. These shocking materials depicted Adam having sex with a woman who was not Olive. The woman was later identified as Sophia Shingrix, Olive's co-worker and a person of interest in the case. The police were astounded by this revelation, as it unveiled a web of deceit and betrayal that had been woven behind Olive's back. As the investigation continued, the police pieced together a timeline of events. They discovered that Adam had been paying for an apartment, using Olive's hard-earned money to sustain an illicit affair. However, this apartment apparently was not for Sophia, but someone else. This revelation painted a chilling picture of deceit and manipulation, as Adam had not only betrayed his wife, but also exploited her financially. The police were determined to bring justice to Olive Parker and expose the truth behind her tragic demise. With the newfound evidence from the abandoned phone, they were inching closer to unraveling the dark secrets that had plagued Olive's seemingly idyllic marriage. The investigation into the tragic death of Olive Parker took an unexpected turn when a new person of interest emerged. Ethan Laroney, Olive's ex-boyfriend, became the focus of the police's attention. Ethan, 34 years old, was known for his charming personality and adventurous spirit despite his struggles with drug addiction. Ethan and Olive had a tumultuous relationship in the past, and even though they had broken up, Ethan still held a deep attachment to her. He longed for a chance to win her back and couldn't let go of their shared history. But it was also revealed that Ethan had been secretly financially supported by Adam Parker, Olive's husband, in exchange for sex. The police were intrigued by this connection and wanted to uncover any motives or connections Ethan might have had to Olive's murder. They delved into Ethan's background, speaking to friends, family, and acquaintances to gather more information. One person who knew Ethan well was his childhood friend, Dean Fring. Dean described Ethan as a troubled soul who often found solace in his relationship with Olive. He recalled an incident where Ethan had expressed his desire to be with Olive again, even though she was happily married to Adam. The police also discovered that Ethan had been involved in a series of petty crimes in the past, including solicitation, mostly related to his drug addiction. They reached out to local law enforcement agencies and reviewed surveillance footage from nearby stores to see if Ethan had been in the vicinity of Olive's apartment on the day of her death. To their surprise, The police found a witness who claimed to have seen Ethan near Olive's apartment complex on the day of the crime. The witness, a store clerk, remembered Ethan because he had come into the store that day to buy cigarettes. This testimony provided a crucial piece of evidence that placed Ethan in the vicinity of the crime scene. As the investigation continued, the police obtained a search warrant for Ethan's residence. They meticulously combed through his belongings, looking for any evidence that could link him to Olive's murder. They found a diary in which Ethan had written about his deep love for Olive and his desire to be with her again, even if it meant having illicit sex with her husband. The police also discovered a hidden stash of drugs in Ethan's apartment, confirming his ongoing struggle with addiction. They wondered if his drug use had clouded his judgment and led him to commit such a heinous act. The investigation into Ethan's involvement in Olive's murder was still ongoing, and the police were determined to uncover the truth. They knew that finding concrete evidence would be crucial in bringing justice to Olive and her grieving family. In a shocking turn of events, the truth behind Olive Parker's tragic murder was finally revealed. After an extensive investigation, the police identified Olive's possessive and insecure husband, Adam Parker, as the perpetrator of this heinous crime. Adam's toxic combination of jealousy and possessiveness led him to commit the unforgivable act of murder, shattering the lives of those who knew and loved Olive. As the investigation unfolded, the police discovered that Adam's controlling behavior towards Olive had escalated in the months leading up to her murder. Friends and family members reported instances of Adam monitoring Olive's every move and isolating her from her loved ones. This pattern of possessiveness raised red flags for those who knew them well. Furthermore, the police uncovered a series of incriminating text messages and emails exchanged between Adam and Sophia Shingrix, Olive's co-worker. These messages revealed a secret affair between Adam and Sophia, adding another layer of complexity to the case. The arrest of Adam Parker sent shockwaves through the community, leaving both friends and neighbors in disbelief. The once idyllic neighborhood of Las Olas became a backdrop for a real-life crime drama, as reporters flocked to the scene to capture the aftermath of this tragic event. This case serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of possessiveness, jealousy, and control in relationships. It is a call to action for society to address the issue of domestic violence and support those who may be trapped in abusive situations. The trial that followed Olive Parker's tragic murder in July of 2012 was a significant event. The courtroom was filled with anticipation as the prosecution, led by District Attorney Laird Hopkins, presented a compelling case against Olive's possessive and insecure husband, Adam Parker. During the trial, the prosecution meticulously laid out a timeline of events, presenting evidence that highlighted Adam's toxic obsession with Olive. They showcased text messages, phone records, and witness testimonies that painted a vivid picture of Adam's jealousy and controlling behavior. The defense attorney, Mark Brinsley Coe, fought hard to cast doubt on the evidence, suggesting alternative explanations and attempting to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. Throughout the trial, Olive's family sat in the courtroom, their hearts heavy with grief and anger. They listened intently to every word spoken, hoping for justice to be served. The media coverage of the trial was extensive, with reporters from prominent news outlets such as CNN and the New York Times providing daily updates on the proceedings. After days of deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the foreperson stood up to deliver the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Adam Parker, guilty of first-degree murder, the foreperson announced, their voice echoing through the courtroom. The gasps of disbelief and tears of relief filled the room as Olive's family and friends embraced each other, finally finding a semblance of closure. The judge, presiding over the case, sentenced Adam Parker to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the sentence sank in. Adam, once a successful lawyer, would now spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying for the heinous crime he committed. The impact of the trial and its outcome reverberated through the community of Fort Lauderdale and beyond. Olive's tragic story served as a reminder of the dark side of human nature and the devastating consequences of possessiveness and jealousy. It sparked conversations about domestic violence and the importance of recognizing the signs of an unhealthy relationship. After the shocking revelation that the prosecutor and the defense attorney were involved in a secret sexual relationship, the trial of Adam Parker was deemed invalid. Olive's family, already burdened by the loss of their beloved daughter, felt betrayed by the very system that was supposed to deliver justice. They were left questioning the integrity of the legal system and wondering if they would ever find closure for Olive's tragic end. Sophia Shingrix, deeply remorseful for her role in the affair, sought therapy to help her cope with the guilt she carried. She realized that her jealousy and resentment towards Olive had clouded her judgment, leading her down a path she never intended to take. Sophia vowed to honor Olive's memory by making amends and striving to be a better person. As the community tried to move forward, the impact of the trial's invalidation continued to reverberate. People couldn't help but question the credibility of the justice system and wonder if the truth would ever be fully revealed. The case garnered attention from advocacy groups and sparked a larger conversation about the need for transparency and accountability within the legal system. Meanwhile, Adam Parker, once again a free man awaiting retrial, retreated from the public eye. He faced the harsh reality of his actions and the consequences that awaited him. The community kept a watchful eye on him, eager to see justice served and Olive's memory honored. And so, the story of Olive Parker's fatal attraction comes to a close. It serves as a chilling reminder of the depths to which jealousy and possessiveness can drive a person. As we reflect on this tragic tale, let us remember the importance of nurturing healthy relationships and seeking help when faced with toxic situations. Kyle Ellerby was an 18-year-old high school senior from Carbondale, Illinois, known for his bright future both on and off the football field. As the star quarterback of Carbondale Community High School's football team, Kyle was admired by his classmates and respected by his coaches. His athletic talent had earned him the nickname Golden Boy among his peers, and he was often featured in local sports reports. He had dreams of playing college football, and several universities had shown interest in recruiting him. Kyle lived with his parents, Richard Ralph Ellerby, 48, and Cindy Ellerby, 45, in a comfortable suburban home. Ralph, a sales manager, was a former athlete himself, having once been a promising football player before a knee injury ended his sports career. He poured his unfulfilled ambitions into Kyle, pushing him to excel in football. Cindy, once vibrant and full of life, had become increasingly withdrawn, battling alcoholism and feelings of inadequacy. The pressure of maintaining appearances weighed heavily on the family, particularly on Kyle, who felt the burden of living up to his father's high expectations. Despite his confident exterior, Kyle was a deeply sensitive young man. He struggled with his sexual identity, a secret he kept hidden from everyone, including his closest friends. The only person who knew the truth was his football coach, Robert J. McMurdo, with whom Kyle had developed a secret sexual relationship. The relationship was a source of both comfort and stress for Kyle, who feared the consequences if their affair were ever discovered. In the days leading up to his death, Kyle was focused on his future. He was preparing for final exams and looking forward to graduation. He spent hours practicing on the football field, determined to secure a college scholarship. However, the stress of maintaining his secret life took its toll. Friends noticed he seemed distracted and more withdrawn than usual. His normally bright smile was replaced by a look of worry. At home, tensions were high, with his mother's drinking spiraling out of control and his father's demands growing more intense. Kyle's last days were a mix of hope and fear as he balanced his dreams of a bright future with the shocking secrets that would ultimately lead to his tragic end. On the morning of May 12, 2014, at around 7:30 a.m., Ralph Ellerby walked downstairs into the basement of his family's home in Carbondale, Illinois, expecting to find his son Kyle getting ready for school. Instead, Ralph stumbled upon a scene that would haunt him forever. Kyle's lifeless body was sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, surrounded by sports equipment and memorabilia, including the football trophies he had won over the years. The basement, usually a place of pride for the Ellerby family, had become the site of a tragic discovery. Ralph's first reaction was shock. He stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what he was seeing. The 48-year-old sales manager, who had always been so proud of his son's accomplishments, now felt a wave of panic and disbelief wash over him. He rushed to Kyle's side, desperately checking for signs of life, but it was clear that his son was gone. The boy who had been the center of his world, the one he had pushed so hard to succeed, was now lying dead at his feet. After a few moments, Ralph managed to gather himself enough to call 911. His voice was shaky and hoarse as he reported what he had found. "My son, he's not breathing," he stammered. The 911 operator tried to keep him calm, asking for details, but Ralph could barely focus on the questions. All he could think about was Kyle and the horrible realization that his son would never fulfill the dreams they had both worked so hard for. When the paramedics arrived a few minutes later, they confirmed what Ralph had already known deep down. Kyle was dead. The scene was eerily quiet, with only the sound of Ralph's heavy breathing and the distant hum of a television in the living room, which had been left on. Cindy Ellerby, Kyle's mother, drunk and still asleep upstairs, was unaware of the tragedy that had just unfolded. It wasn't until Ralph's anguished cries echoed through the house that she awoke, disoriented, and still groggy from the night before. When she finally realized what had happened, her screams pierced the quiet morning, adding to the grief that was now overwhelming the Ellerby household. The Carbondale police arrived at the Ellerby residence around 8:00 a.m. on May 12, 2014, just minutes after Ralph's frantic 911 call. Leading the investigation was Detective Sally O'Malley, a seasoned officer known for her sharp instincts and no-nonsense approach. O'Malley, 42, had been with the Carbondale Police Department for over 15 years and had handled her fair share of tough cases, but the death of a popular high school quarterback like Kyle Ellerby was sure to be one of the most challenging. When O'Malley and her team entered the basement, they found a scene that didn't quite add up. Kyle's body lay at the foot of the stairs, with a large football trophy nearby. The room was cluttered with sports equipment. Helmets, jerseys, and footballs were scattered around. But there was something about the positioning of the body and the items around it that caught O'Malley's attention. The detective noted that while Kyle's head injury appeared consistent with the fall, a lack of blood and the angle of his body suggested something more sinister. The basement was dimly lit, with only a few small windows allowing in the morning light. The walls were adorned with posters of NFL stars like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, and the shelves were lined with trophies, highlighting Kyle's impressive athletic achievements. O'Malley carefully examined the scene, noting the absence of any clear signs of struggle, but her experience told her that what seemed like an accident could easily be a staged crime. As the forensics team began their work, taking photos and collecting evidence, O'Malley focused on the heavy football trophy that was lying next to Kyle. It was large enough to inflict a fatal blow, and there were faint smudges on it that looked like fingerprints. The detective ordered it to be bagged as evidence, suspecting it could be the murder weapon. The rest of the house was searched as well. The living room still had the TV on, playing Good Morning America on ABC, while Cindy Ellerby sat on the couch in shock, a half-empty bottle of vodka on the coffee table in front of her. Ralph, who had made the initial discovery, was pacing the floor, visibly distraught but cooperating with the officers. Detective O'Malley's instincts told her this wasn't just a tragic accident. The eeriness of the scene, combined with the odd details, hinted at something far more complex. As the investigation unfolded, it would soon become clear that Kyle Ellerby's death was not what it appeared to be. The first person Detective O'Malley turned her attention to was Coach Robert J. McMurdo, the 46-year-old football coach at Carbondale Community High School. Coach McMurdo was well known in the community, not just for leading the football team to numerous victories, but also for his charismatic and authoritative presence. He had a reputation for being tough but fair, someone who could bring out the best in his players. Underneath his confident exterior, however, O'Malley suspected there might be more to the coach than met the eye. At the police station, McMurdo was cooperative but clearly nervous. He sat across from Detective O'Malley in a small, dimly lit interrogation room. The walls were bare, and the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. O'Malley began the interview by asking McMurdo about his relationship with Kyle. The coach spoke fondly of the young man, describing him as one of the most talented and dedicated players he had ever coached. With that body of his, Kyle had a natural gift, McMurdo said, his voice trembling slightly. He could read the field like no one else. I had big plans for him. But when O'Malley pressed further, asking if their relationship extended beyond the football field, McMurdo hesitated. His discomfort was palpable as he struggled to maintain his composure. He admitted he cared about Kyle, but only as a coach cares for any of his players. O'Malley wasn't convinced. She could see the guilt in his eyes, the fear of something being exposed. She then asked directly about any sexual relationship between him and Kyle, a question that made McMurdo visibly tense. His denial was immediate, but there was a quiver in his voice that O'Malley couldn't ignore. The detective then shifted the conversation to the morning of Kyle's death, asking McMurdo about his whereabouts and whether he had any contact with Kyle that day. The coach insisted he was at home preparing for practice and hadn't spoken to Kyle since the previous day. However, when O'Malley presented him with a record of sexually explicit text messages and naked pictures sent between him and Kyle sent late the night before, McMurdo's calm demeanor began to crack. McMurdo's face went pale as he realized the evidence against him was mounting. "He had a body like Adonis," he exclaimed. Robert told police he was conflicted by his romantic relationship with Kyle, which turned sexual after watching Kyle shower after a practice. He said he genuinely loved the young man, but he knew the consequences if their affair were ever discovered. Throughout the interrogation, McMurdo maintained his innocence, but his nervousness only grew. He repeatedly wiped his forehead with a handkerchief, his hands shaking slightly. Despite his efforts to appear in control, it was clear that the pressure was getting to him. O'Malley knew she had rattled him, but she also knew that without a confession or more concrete evidence, she couldn't arrest him just yet. The interrogation ended with McMurdo being released, but not before O'Malley made it clear that he was now a prime suspect in the investigation. Next, Detective Sally O'Malley turned her attention to Richard Ralph Ellerby, Kyle's 48-year-old father. Ralph was a sales manager at a local auto dealership and a well-known figure in Carbondale. He had a reputation as a proud, ambitious man who lived vicariously through his son's accomplishments. Once a star high school athlete himself, Ralph's football career was cut short by a knee injury. He had channeled all his unfulfilled dreams into Kyle, pushing him to excel on the football field. On the morning of Kyle's death, Ralph's reaction was intense. He was visibly distressed and kept asking the officers what had happened to his son. According to witnesses, he seemed more agitated than heartbroken. His concern focused on how this tragedy might affect Kyle's legacy and the family's reputation. During his interview with O'Malley, Ralph was cooperative but defensive. He spoke proudly of Kyle's achievements, emphasizing how much he had invested in his son's future. Kyle was destined for greatness, Ralph said, his voice thick with emotion. He was gonna go all the way to the NFL, and I was going to make sure of it. But as the conversation shifted to Kyle's personal life, Ralph's tone changed. He became evasive, particularly when O'Malley asked about Kyle's relationship with Coach McMurdo. O'Malley had already discovered that Ralph's and McMurdo's relationship was sexual. Ralph often attended practices, games, and even team meetings where he and the coach would discuss Kyle's progress and future. When asked if he knew about Kyle's sexual involvement with McMurdo, Ralph hesitated. He eventually admitted that he had heard rumors, but insisted he didn't believe them. However, O'Malley wasn't entirely convinced. She had evidence suggesting that Ralph knew more than he was letting on. Text messages between Ralph and McMurdo, found on Ralph's phone, vividly showed that he was aware of the relationship between his son and the coach, even planning dates for him and offering to be a lookout. In one exchange, Ralph even congratulated the coach, telling him that his sex with Kyle must have been behind his 3 touchdowns during a previous game. Despite Ralph's efforts to appear calm and collected, O'Malley noticed cracks in his composure. His voice would occasionally waver, and he seemed unusually anxious when discussing certain topics. The detective suspected that Ralph's deep-seated homophobia and fear of scandal had created a volatile mix of emotions that he was struggling to keep under control. As the interview concluded, O'Malley couldn't shake the feeling that Ralph was hiding something. His refusal to fully acknowledge the possibility of his son's involvement with Coach McMurdo, coupled with his obvious discomfort, made him a person of interest in the ongoing investigation. The final suspect on Detective Sally O'Malley's list was Cindy Ellerby, Kyle's 45-year-old mother. Cindy had once been a vibrant woman, a formed teen beauty queen with a lively personality. But by May of 2014, she had become a shadow of her former self, struggling with alcoholism and deep-seated feelings of sexual inadequacy. Her marriage to Ralph had grown strained and loveless, and she often felt overlooked in her own home, especially as Ralph focused all his attention on Kyle's football career. Cindy's descent into alcohol abuse had become well known in the community. Neighbors frequently saw her at the local liquor store, often buying bottles of cheap vodka. Her drinking had escalated to the point where she was rarely sober, leading to erratic behavior that further isolated her from friends and family. Cindy's relationship with Kyle had also deteriorated. She resented the pressure placed on him by Ralph and was deeply jealous of the close bond between Kyle and his father. On the morning of Kyle's death, Cindy had been at home. When the police arrived, they found her in a state of hysteria, alternating between sobbing uncontrollably and shouting incoherently. Her disheveled appearance and the smell of alcohol on her breath raised immediate concerns among the officers on the scene. During her interview with Detective O'Malley, Cindy was unstable and emotional. She fluctuated between anger and sadness, her responses often incoherent. O'Malley asked about Cindy's relationship with Kyle, and Cindy's answers were evasive. "Kyle was my baby," she said repeatedly, but when pressed for details about their interactions in the days leading up to his death, she struggled to provide clear answers. O'Malley also inquired about Cindy's relationship with Coach McMurdo. Cindy's reaction was telling. Her face twisted in anger, and she accused her son of taking away Coach McMurdo from her. Kyle had the mind of a hussy and the body of Tom Brady. She spat out, her words dripping with bitterness. "Why did he have to take my man?" As the interview progressed, Cindy became increasingly agitated, especially when O'Malley suggested that Kyle's death might not have been an accident. Cindy's mood swings and erratic behavior made it difficult to get a coherent narrative from her. However, O'Malley noted that Cindy's anger toward McMurdo and her jealousy of Kyle's relationship with his father seemed to be driving her emotional outbursts. Despite her unstable demeanor, Cindy remained a person of interest. O'Malley couldn't ignore the possibility that Cindy's deep-seated resentments and her deteriorating mental state might have played a role in Kyle's death. The detective left the interview with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Cindy Ellerby's troubled past and volatile emotions made her a key figure in this tragic case. On May 18, 2014, just a week after Kyle Ellerby's tragic death, a startling new development shook the town of Carbondale. It happened during Kyle's memorial service, held at the local high school gymnasium, where hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their respects. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, but it was Ralph Ellerby's unexpected outburst that left everyone in shock. Ralph, visibly intoxicated and overcome with emotion, stood up in the middle of the service. His words were slurred, but the message was clear. He confessed to knowing that his wife, Cindy Ellerby, had killed their son. Ralph revealed that he had helped Cindy stage the scene to look like an accident in a desperate attempt to protect their family from scandal. The crowd was stunned into silence, unable to process the magnitude of his admission. Detective Sally O'Malley, who had been attending the service to observe the family's behavior, immediately knew the investigation had just taken a critical turn. After Ralph's confession, the Carbondale Police Department quickly responded, taking Ralph into custody for further questioning. The police returned to the Ellerby household, this time with a clearer understanding of what they were looking for. Inside the home, they revisited the basement where Kyle's body had been found. With Ralph's confession in mind, the officers searched for any evidence that could corroborate his story. They discovered traces of blood that had been poorly cleaned, as well as additional fragments of the shattered trophy that had been missed during the initial investigation. Forensic experts re-examined the evidence, confirming that the blood found at the scene matched Kyle's DNA. Ralph's confession, combined with the physical evidence, painted a grim picture of the events leading up to Kyle's death. It was now evident that Cindy had struck Kyle with the trophy in a fit of rage, and that Ralph had assisted her in covering up the crime. The community was left reeling from Ralph's shocking revelation. What had once been seen as a tragic accident was now understood to be a brutal murder, meticulously concealed by the very people who should have protected Kyle the most. This new evidence and Ralph's confession brought the investigation to a critical juncture, setting the stage for a shocking arrest. Following Ralph Ellerby's shocking confession at his son Kyle's memorial service, the Carbondale Police Department wasted no time in moving forward with the investigation. On May 20, 2014, just 48 hours after Ralph's admission, the police officially identified Cindy Ellerby as the prime suspect in Kyle's murder. Cindy, a 45-year-old homemaker struggling with alcoholism, had long been a troubled figure in the community. Her erratic behavior and strained relationship with Kyle had not gone unnoticed by neighbors and friends, but the truth of her involvement in his death was still a bitter pill for many to swallow. Detective Sally O'Malley led the charge to bring Cindy into custody. The team assembled at the Ellerby household early that morning. The atmosphere was tense, with overcast skies matching the somber mood of the officers. When they arrived at the door, Cindy answered, looking disheveled and weary, as if she had aged years in the days since the memorial. Without much resistance, Cindy was placed under arrest. The weight of the moment seemed to hit her all at once, and she broke down in tears, not out of surprise, but out of resignation. She knew that the truth had finally caught up with her. As Cindy was escorted to the police car, the neighborhood was eerily quiet, with only the distant hum of morning traffic breaking the silence. Inside the station, she was formally charged with the murder of her son, Kyle Ellerby. During her initial interrogation, Cindy was emotional but cooperative, providing a detailed account of the events leading up to the murder. She admitted that on the night of Kyle's death, she had been drinking heavily. An argument with Kyle had escalated, fueled by her smoldering jealousy over his sexual relationship with Coach Murdo. In a blind rage, she grabbed one of Kyle's football trophies and struck him with it, killing him instantly. Cindy explained how Ralph, upon discovering what she had done, decided to help her stage the scene as an accident. Together, they dragged Kyle's body to the bottom of the basement stairs and scattered sports equipment around to make it appear as though he had fallen. Ralph had hoped that this would keep their family's dark secret hidden, but his conscience ultimately betrayed him. The arrest of Cindy Ellerby sent shockwaves through the community. For the Ellerby family, once admired for their success and unity, the reality of their downfall was now laid bare. The reactions of those close to Kyle were a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. A struggle to comprehend how a mother could commit such a heinous act against her own child. Cindy Ellerby's trial for the murder of her son, Kyle Ellerby, began in late August 2014 at the Jackson County Courthouse in Carbondale, Illinois. The case quickly became the talk of the town, with local media outlets like the Southern Illinoisan covering every detail. The courtroom was packed with spectators, many of whom had known the Ellerby family for years and were eager to see justice served. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mark Armthorpe, a seasoned 50-year-old attorney known for his tough stance on violent crimes, argued that Cindy's actions were premeditated. He painted a picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and anger, unable to cope with her son's relationship with Coach Robert J. Murdo. Armthorpe emphasized the brutality of the crime, noting that Cindy had not only killed her son but had also gone to great lengths to cover up the murder with the help of her husband, Ralph. The prosecution's case was bolstered by forensic evidence and Ralph's confession, both of which left little room for doubt. On the defense side, attorney Linda Caldwell Blankenship, a 45-year-old public defender with a reputation for taking on difficult cases, argued that Cindy's actions were not premeditated but rather the result of a momentary lapse in judgment fueled by alcohol and emotional distress. Caldwell Blankenship sought to portray Cindy as a victim of her circumstances, a woman struggling with addiction and mental health issues, overwhelmed by the pressures of her life. She pleaded for leniency, arguing that Cindy's actions were not those of a cold-blooded killer, but of a deeply troubled individual who needed help, not harsh punishment. Throughout the trial, Kyle's friends and teammates attended in support of the Ellerby family, their faces reflecting the pain and confusion of losing a beloved friend under such tragic circumstances. The jury deliberated for just 2 days before returning with a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Cindy Ellerby was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought some measure of closure to Kyle's friends and family, but the impact of the trial was profound. Cindy's sentencing left the community divided. Some felt that justice had been served, while others believed the punishment was too harsh for a woman who had clearly been struggling with her own demons. For Ralph Ellerby, the trial marked the final unraveling of his family, leaving him to face the consequences of his own complicity in Kyle's death. In the aftermath of Cindy Ellerby's trial, life in Carbondale, Illinois would never be the same for those involved. Cindy, now serving a 25-year sentence at Logan Correctional Center, had little contact with the outside world. Her time in prison was marked by isolation and regret as she grappled with the consequences of her actions. The once vibrant woman who had been a familiar face at high school football games was now a shadow of her former self, lost in the routine of prison life. Ralph Ellerby, Kyle's father, was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. He sold the family home, unable to bear living in the place where his son had died. Ralph moved to a small apartment on the outskirts of town, where he continued to struggle with his guilt. He had lost not only his son and wife, but also the respect of the community. Ralph, who had once been a prominent figure in Carbondale, found himself alienated and alone, with only his memories for company. His battle with alcohol worsened, and he rarely left his apartment, becoming a recluse. Coach Robert J. Murdo, who had been at the center of the scandal, resigned from his position at the high school. The revelation of his relationship with Kyle Ellerby had destroyed his career. Despite never being charged with a crime, the damage to his reputation was irreversible. McMurdo moved out of state, trying to rebuild his life in anonymity. However, the stigma followed him. and he found it difficult to escape the shadows of his past. He took on low-profile jobs, avoiding any roles that would put him back in the public eye. The community of Carbondale, once united in support of the Ellerby family, was left divided and disillusioned. The trial had exposed the darker side of the town, shattering the image of a perfect community. In the years that followed, the memory of Kyle Ellerby's tragic death lingered, a reminder of the secrets that can tear a family and a town apart. Suzette Anarchy was a 44-year-old manager at Ruby Tuesdays, a popular restaurant chain known for its American fare and salad bar. She lived in a large suburban McMansion in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, a city known for its friendly neighborhoods and good schools. Suzette was an ambitious and outgoing woman. Her friends and family described her as someone who lived life to the fullest. She loved adventure sports like hiking and rock climbing, and she often spent her weekends exploring nature trails and cliffs. Suzette's educational journey began at Broken Arrow High School, where she was known for her excellent grades and participation in various clubs. She later attended the University of Oklahoma, where she majored in business management. Her education helped her rise quickly in her career, and she was deeply committed to her job at Ruby Tuesdays, where she was a respected manager. Suzette had a close-knit family. She was married to Danny Anarchy, and she had a teenage daughter named Luna Anarchy from her ex-husband Ross. Her relationship with Danny was complex, with periods of intense affection and moments of jealousy. Luna, an 18-year-old college student at Oklahoma State University, looked up to her mother and shared her adventurous spirit. Suzette's friends described her as fiercely loyal and always ready to help those in need. She was the kind of person who made everyone feel special. She had a magnetic personality that drew people to her. Her colleagues admired her work ethic and her ability to manage the restaurant efficiently while maintaining a friendly atmosphere. In the days leading up to her death, Suzette was particularly excited about a new managerial project at work. She had been working on improving the restaurant's customer service and menu options. She also planned a weekend hiking trip with her friends to celebrate the successful completion of the project. Suzette's dreams included further advancing her career and spending more time with her family and friends. She was looking forward to the upcoming fall season, with plans to visit local pumpkin patches and attend the Tulsa State Fair. On the evening of September 13, 2002, Suzette spent time with her family, discussing their plans for the weekend. She was in high spirits, full of hope and excitement for the future. Sadly, her dreams were cut short the following morning when her life was tragically taken. On the morning of September 14, 2002, the sky was overcast, and a light drizzle fell over Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. At around 7:30 a.m., Luna Anarchy, an 18-year-old college student, woke up and went to her mother's large walk-in closet in her family's large suburban home. Luna had plans to meet friends later that day, but first, she wanted to check on her mother, Suzette. As Luna entered the closet, she was met with a horrific sight. Her mother, Suzette Anarchy, lay lifeless on the floor in a pool of blood. Several belts, possibly the murder weapon, were scattered around her body. Luna's initial shock turned to sheer panic. She screamed and fell to her knees beside her mother. Struggling to maintain her composure, Luna reached for the phone and dialed 911, her voice shaking as she reported the brutal scene. The 911 call was received at 7:35 a.m. Luna, barely able to speak through her tears, described what she saw. The dispatcher stayed on the line with her, offering calm reassurances until the police arrived. Luna's frantic call sent a wave of urgency through the Broken Arrow Police Department. When the first responders arrived, they found Luna in a state of deep shock, sitting on the front steps of the house, her clothes stained with blood from holding her mother. The officers quickly secured the scene, ensuring no one could enter or leave the house while they began their investigation. The discovery of Suzette's body sent shockwaves through the Broken Arrow community. News quickly spread, and by midday, local media, including the Tulsa World newspaper and TV stations like KOTV Channel 6, were reporting on the tragic incident. Neighbors and friends gathered outside the Anarchy home, offering their support and expressing their disbelief. Suzette Anarchy's murder marked the beginning of a complex investigation. The police were determined to uncover the truth behind her brutal death and bring her killer to justice. As they worked tirelessly, the impact of Suzette's death resonated through the community, leaving everyone grappling with the loss of a beloved friend, colleague, and mother. When the Broken Arrow Police Department received Luna Anarchy's frantic 911 call on September 14, 2002, they knew they had to act fast. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle continued as officers rushed to the scene. Detective Mark Corley, a seasoned investigator with 15 years on the force, led the team. Known for his sharp eye and calm demeanor, Corley arrived with his partner, Detective Susan Alera, who had a reputation for her meticulous attention to detail. When Corley and Alera entered the Anna Key home, they were met with a gruesome scene. Suzette Anna Key's body lay in the middle of her large walk-in closet, surrounded by belts stained with blood. The room showed clear signs of a struggle. Blood splatters covered the walls and furniture, indicating the violent nature of the attack. The detectives noted the presence of nunchucks, hinting at a possible history of abuse. The police quickly secured the crime scene, ensuring that no evidence would be disturbed. Corley began by documenting everything meticulously. He photographed the body, the belts, and the nunchucks, making sure to capture every detail. Alera, meanwhile, collected physical evidence, carefully bagging the belts for forensic analysis. They found no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Suzette likely knew her attacker. The medical examiner arrived shortly after to examine Suzette's body. The deep lacerations caused by the belts confirmed that Suzette had died from blunt force trauma. The brutal nature of the attack indicated intense rage, pointing to a personal motive. While Corley and Alera worked inside, uniformed officers canvassed the neighborhood. They interviewed neighbors and potential witnesses, hoping to gather information that could lead to a suspect. One neighbor mentioned hearing loud arguments from the Anna Key home the night before, adding a crucial detail to the timeline.
Detective Corley and his team continued their investigation late into the evening. They used luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains and dusted for fingerprints. The evidence pointed to a personal and deeply emotional motive behind Suzette's murder. As they processed the crime scene, the detectives were determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to Suzette and her grieving family.
The thorough work of the Broken Arrow Police Department laid the foundation for solving this tragic case. Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, brought them one step closer to identifying Suzette's killer. The first suspect in Suzette Anna Key's murder was her husband, Danny Anna Key. At 48 years old, Danny was known for his intelligence and meticulous nature. He worked as an accountant, a job that suited his detail-oriented personality. However, those who knew Danny also described him as emotionally distant and sometimes jealous, especially regarding his relationship with Suzette. Detective Mark Corley and Detective Susan Alera brought Danny in for questioning on the afternoon of September 14, 2002. The police station was abuzz with activity as the news of Suzette's murder spread. Danny appeared calm but nervous, a stark contrast to the horror that had unfolded in his home. Corley started the interrogation by asking Danny to recount his activities the night before. Danny claimed he had been working late on a project for a client and then went to bed early. However, his alibi quickly began to fall apart. When detectives checked with his workplace, they found no record of him being there late. Moreover, Danny's colleagues mentioned that he had left the office at his usual time. During the questioning, Danny remained mostly composed but showed signs of discomfort when asked about his relationship with Suzette. He admitted that they had arguments, mainly about his jealousy and her long hours at work. Danny also acknowledged that he was aware of Suzette's close friendship with Ross Cambray, her ex-husband who often helped around the house. However, he denied any involvement in her murder. The detectives pressed further, asking about the belts and nunchucks found at the crime scene. Danny hesitated but eventually admitted that the belts were his. He said he used them for his martial arts hobby, but insisted he had never used them to hurt Suzette. His answers were evasive, and his calm demeanor began to crack, revealing glimpses of anger and frustration. Detectives Corley and Alera noticed these changes in his behavior. They believed that Danny's meticulous and controlling nature could have driven him to commit the crime, especially if he felt threatened by Suzette's independence or her relationship with Ross. As the interrogation continued, Danny's responses grew more erratic. He alternated between calm denials and angry outbursts, raising the detective's suspicions further. The interview ended with Danny still professing his innocence, but the inconsistencies in his story and his emotional volatility painted a different picture. The investigation into Danny Anna Key was just beginning. Detectives Corley and Alera knew they needed more evidence to connect him to Suzette's murder. But with each question, Danny became a more likely suspect in the eyes of the police. The next suspect in Suzette Anna Key's murder was Ross Cambray, her 37-year-old ex-husband. Ross was disciplined, energetic, and known for his supportive nature. He worked as a fitness trainer at a local gym, a job that suited his active lifestyle. He had known Suzette since college, and their friendship remained strong over the years despite their divorce 8 years before. Ross was frequently seen at the Anarchy home, helping with the garden and house repairs. On the morning of September 15, 2002, detectives Mark Corley and Susan Illara brought Ross in for questioning. The police station was filled with reporters, all eager for updates on the case. Ross appeared cooperative but visibly nervous as he sat down with the detectives. Detective Corley began the interrogation by asking Ross about his relationship with Suzette and Danny. Ross admitted that he was still very close to Suzette and considered her one of his best friends. He also acknowledged his friendship with Danny, but noted that their relationship had become strained over time. As the questioning continued, Ross dropped a bombshell. He revealed that he had been secretly having sex with both Danny and Suzette, unbeknownst to each other. This revelation shocked the detectives, adding a new layer of complexity to the case. Ross explained that the relationships had been going on for several months, and he felt deeply conflicted about them. Detective Illara asked Ross if he had any knowledge of the belts and nunchucks found at the crime scene. Ross shook his head and insisted he had never seen Danny use them for anything other than martial arts practice. He also stated that he had no idea about any abuse in the Anarchy household. Ross's demeanor was a mix of nervousness and cooperation. He answered the detectives' questions honestly but seemed deeply troubled by the situation. He explained that on the night of Suzette's murder, he had been at home, alone, watching Jimmy Neutron and Rugrats. Unfortunately, he had no one to corroborate his alibi. The detectives found Ross's confession about the secret relationships to be both surprising and suspicious. It gave Ross a potential motive. If Suzette or Danny had discovered the affairs, it could have led to a violent confrontation. However, Ross's genuine sadness and shock over Suzette's death made it hard to believe he could commit such a brutal crime. As the interrogation ended, Ross was released but remained a person of interest. Detectives Corley and Illara knew they needed to dig deeper into Ross's background and alibi to determine if he had any involvement in Suzette's murder. The investigation was becoming more complex, with each suspect revealing new and startling information. On September 17, 2002, 3 days after Suzette Anarchy's murder, the investigation took a crucial turn. The day was clear and sunny, providing a stark contrast to the grim task at hand. Detective Mark Corley received a call from a neighbor who had found something unusual in her backyard while gardening. She had unearthed a blood-stained shirt buried in the dirt. Detectives Corley and Susan Illara rushed to the scene to collect the evidence. The neighbor handed over the shirt, immense size, and it appeared to have been hastily buried. They carefully placed it in an evidence bag, knowing it could be a key piece in solving the case. Back at the police station, the shirt was sent to the forensic lab for analysis. Meanwhile, Corley and Illara reviewed the case files and the alibis of their suspects. The new evidence could potentially break the case wide open. The forensic team worked quickly to analyze the shirt. By late afternoon, they had found DNA that matched Danny Anarchy. This finding was significant and placed Danny at the crime scene, providing physical evidence linking him to the murder. With this new evidence in hand, the detectives dug deeper into Danny's background. They discovered a disturbing pattern of abuse. Suzette had been brutally abused by Danny. He frequently beat her with belts, one in each hand, in what he called cowboy style. He also used a pair of nunchucks for what he referred to as a ninja beating. These findings painted a horrifying picture of Suzette's life and suggested a motive driven by Danny's violent tendencies and control issues. The third suspect in the investigation was Luna Anarchy, Suzette's 18-year-old daughter. Luna was a charismatic and ambitious college student at Oklahoma State University, known for her social skills and persuasive nature. She had a magnetic personality and was popular among her peers. However, Luna had been hiding a significant secret. She was pregnant with her stepfather Danny's child. On September 18, 2002, detectives Mark Corley and Susan Illara brought Luna in for questioning at the Broken Arrow Police Department. Luna appeared calm but apprehensive as she sat down with the detectives. Detective Corley began by asking Luna about her relationship with her mother and stepfather. Luna spoke fondly of her mother, describing her as a loving and adventurous person. When asked about Danny, Luna hesitated before revealing the shocking details of their affair. She admitted that the relationship had been ongoing for several years,
and that she was pregnant with his child. The detectives were stunned by Luna's confession. They questioned her about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Luna claimed she had been out with friends, celebrating a successful exam. However, her friends' statements were inconsistent, and some couldn't confirm seeing her that night. Detective Valera asked Luma if she had any knowledge of the belts and nunchucks found at the crime scene.
Luma's eyes widened, and she appeared genuinely shocked. She denied any involvement in her mother's murder and insisted that she loved Suzette deeply. Despite her calm demeanor, the detectives noticed signs of stress and fear. Luna's potential motive was complex. If Suzette had discovered the affair and the pregnancy, it could have led to a confrontation. However, Luma's genuine grief over her mother's death made it difficult to believe she was involved. The detectives decided to dig deeper into Luma's background and relationships. As the interrogation continued, Luna maintained her innocence but admitted that her relationship with Danny was a mistake. She expressed remorse for the pain it had caused and seemed genuinely devastated by her mother's death. Despite Luma's emotional responses, the detectives knew they had to consider all possibilities. They reviewed her alibi and questioned her friends again, looking for any inconsistencies. Luma's complex relationship with Danny and her secret pregnancy added layers to the investigation, making it one of the most challenging aspects of the case. Luna's interview ended with more questions than answers. The detectives knew they needed concrete evidence to determine her involvement, if any, in Suzette's murder. The investigation was far from over, and every new piece of information brought them closer to the truth. With the discovery of the blood-stained shirt and the pattern of abuse, the Broken Arrow Police Department felt confident they had identified Suzette Anna Key's murderer. On September 18, 2002, detectives Mark Coralai and Susan Alera pieced together the evidence pointing to Danny Anna Key as the killer. The weather was clear, mirroring the clarity with which the case had come into focus. Danny Anna Key, a 48-year-old accountant, had shown signs of jealousy and violent tendencies. Investigators learned that Danny had been abusing Suzette for years. He would beat her with belts, one in each hand, a method he called cowboy style. He also used nunchucks, referring to this brutal practice as ninja beating. This abuse, combined with his desire to be with his stepdaughter Luna, who was also pregnant with his child, motivated him to commit the murder. Danny believed that killing Suzette would allow him to start a new life with Luna without the complications of a divorce. Additionally, he stood to gain financially from Suzette's life insurance policy. On the night of September 14, 2002, under the guise of another abusive episode, Danny whipped Suzette to death cowboy style with his belts in their large suburban home. Detectives Coralai and Alera gathered all the evidence, including witness testimonies and forensic analysis, and presented their case to the district attorney. The decision was made to arrest Danny for Suzette's murder. On the morning of September 18, the police planned the arrest. Under a clear sky, they approached Danny's office, knowing that apprehending him in public would prevent any potential escape or harm to others. Danny was taken into custody without incident. He appeared shocked and tried to maintain his innocence, but the overwhelming evidence against him made his guilt apparent. Suzette's family, particularly her daughter Luna, had mixed reactions. Luna was torn between the loss of her mother and the arrest of her stepfather and secret lover. Friends and neighbors expressed relief that the alleged perpetrator was in custody, hoping for justice for Suzette. The arrest marked a significant step towards closure for Suzette's family and friends. Detective Coralai and Detective Alera, who had worked tirelessly on the case, felt a sense of accomplishment but knew the journey was far from over. The trial would be the next hurdle in bringing full justice to Suzette Anna Key's tragic end. The trial of Danny Anna Key began in late September 2002, capturing the attention of the Broken Arrow community and the media. The prosecution was led by District Attorney James D. Capria, a 45-year-old known for his sharp mind and dedication to justice. He presented the case with determination, focusing on the evidence that painted Danny as a violent and controlling husband who murdered his wife, Suzette, to be with his stepdaughter Luna and benefit from a life insurance policy. Capria outlined the abuse Suzette had endured, including the horrific cowboy style and ninja beating methods Danny used. He detailed the events of the night of September 14, emphasizing the bloodstained shirt and the DNA evidence linking Danny to the crime scene. Capria called witnesses, including neighbors and forensic experts, who testified about the abuse and the evidence. The defense attorney, Robert Angel Coralai, a 50-year-old with a calm demeanor and years of experience in criminal defense, argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that Danny was a loving husband who was being unfairly targeted. Coralie suggested that the real killer could have been someone else, possibly Ross Cambry or even Luma. He questioned the reliability of the witness testimonies and the forensic evidence, trying to cast doubt in the minds of the jurors. Throughout the trial, Suzette's family watched with heavy hearts. Luna, torn between the loss of her mother and the arrest of her stepfather and lover, appeared visibly distressed. Friends and neighbors who had known Suzette as a vibrant and loyal person were there to support the family, hoping for justice. After several days of testimonies and arguments, the jury deliberated. On October 3, 2002, they returned with a verdict. Danny Anakey was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the judge pronounced the sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. The severity of the punishment reflected the brutality of the crime and the betrayal of trust. Danny showed little emotion as the sentence was read, maintaining his innocence. Suzette's family, while relieved that justice had been served, was also grappling with the emotional toll of the trial and the loss of Suzette. Luna was particularly affected, struggling with her complicated feelings about Danny and the devastating impact on her life. The trial's conclusion brought a sense of closure to the community, but the scars of Suzette's tragic death would remain. Friends and family members tried to move forward, remembering Suzette for the loving and adventurous person she was. After the trial of Danny Anakey, the residents of Broken Arrow tried to return to their normal lives, but the memory of Suzette Anakey's tragic death lingered. The verdict had brought a sense of justice, but the community was still healing from the shock. Danny was sent to a maximum security prison to serve his life sentence without the possibility of parole. He continued to claim his innocence, but his appeals were repeatedly denied. In prison, Danny was a model inmate, but he remained isolated and alone, reflecting on the choices that led him to this point. Luna Anakey faced a difficult path ahead. She decided to leave Oklahoma State University for a semester to take care of her mental health. The revelation of her affair with Danny and her pregnancy had left her feeling lost and overwhelmed. Luna sought therapy to help her process the trauma and rebuild her life. She moved in with her maternal grandparents, who offered her support and a safe place to grieve and heal as she raised her daughter, Yat, as a single mother. Ross Cambry, who had been caught in the web of the investigation due to his secret relationships with both Suzette and Danny, returned to his job as a fitness trainer. The experience had changed him profoundly, and he became more private and introspective. Ross focused on his work and avoided the spotlight, hoping to leave the past behind. Suzette's parents, devastated by the loss of their daughter, focused on supporting Luna and preserving Suzette's legacy. They created a scholarship fund in Suzette's name at the local high school, aiming to help young women pursue their dreams. The town of Broken Arrow, though scared by the tragic events, found ways to heal and remember. Suzette Anakey's story was a reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the need for kindness and understanding. Life slowly moved forward, but Suzette's vibrant spirit continued to inspire those who knew her. In the summer of 2001, as the world slowly adjusted to the new millennium, Ray Truscott, a 53-year-old life insurance analyst from Plano, Texas, was preparing to celebrate a milestone that many couples dream of but few reach: his 20th wedding anniversary. Ray, a father of 3, was known in his community as a man of integrity and dedication. He had built a stable career at New Life Financial, a reputable firm known for its competitive edge in the bustling Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. A graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, Ray had climbed the ranks through sheer determination and a knack for numbers. His colleagues often described him as the first to arrive and the last to leave the office, a testament to his work ethic. Ray's life at home was no less exemplary. His wife, Dinah, and their children were the center of his world. Neighbors would often see the Truscott family at community events or hear about their travels to places like the Grand Canyon or Disney World, the latter being featured in a 2001 Disney vacation planning VHS that had just been released. Ray's personality was a blend of the analytical mind of an insurance analyst and the warm heart of a family man. He was known for his dry wit, often referencing the latest Dilbert comic strip, which amusingly captured the quirks of corporate culture. His dreams, though, were not confined to spreadsheets and actuarial tables. Ray aspired to see his children graduate from college and to one day retire to a quiet life, perhaps in the Texas Hill Country, where he and Dinah could enjoy their golden years. In the days leading up to his death, Ray was seen in high spirits, even mentioning to his neighbor about his anticipation for the U2 Elevation Tour concert, scheduled for later that year. He had been meticulously planning the anniversary cruise, set to embark from Galveston, Texas, aboard the majestic Voyager of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean vessel famed for its luxurious amenities and scenic routes. Little did anyone know that this journey, meant to celebrate 2 decades of love and commitment, would be his last. On the morning of June 15, 2001, as the Voyager of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean cruise liner, cut through the tranquil waters of the Gulf of Mexico, an unsettling discovery was made that would mar the ship's record of idyllic voyages. It was approximately 7:30 a.m. when the body of Ray Truscott, a 53-year-old life insurance analyst from Plano, Texas, was spotted by a fishing boat, the Sea Sprite, captained by Marcus Caldwell. The vessel, a common sight in these waters, was out for its regular trawl when it stumbled upon the grim scene. The weather was uncharacteristically mild for a June morning, with a soft breeze that offered little solace to the crew of the Sea Sprite as they grappled with their find. Captain Caldwell, a seasoned mariner, was taken aback by the sight of the lifeless body bobbing in the gentle swells. His initial shock quickly turned to action as he radioed the Coast Guard, his voice steadied but tinged with the gravity of the situation. The crew, maintaining their composure, secured the area to preserve the integrity of what was now a crime scene. The discovery sent ripples through the media, with local news channels like KHU interrupting their regular programming to report on the incident. The cruise ship, which had set sail from Galveston, a port city still bustling with tourists flocking to attractions like Moody Gardens and the recently opened Schlitterbahn water park, was now the center of a tragic narrative. As the news of the discovery reached the ship, passengers who had been enjoying amenities such as the ship's ice skating rink and mini golf course were struck by a palpable sense of disbelief. The vacationers, many of whom were Texans looking to escape the early summer heat, were now witnesses to a real-life drama unfolding in the midst of their leisure. The serene morning of June 15, 2001, aboard the Voyager of the Seas was abruptly shattered when word of Ray Truscott's untimely death reached the ship's captain. Within hours, the vessel, a floating city that boasted a rock-climbing wall and an opulent dining hall, transformed into a somber crime scene. The U.S. Coast Guard, alongside the FBI, tasked with investigating crimes on international waters, quickly dispatched their best agents to the ship, which was now anchored off the coast of Galveston, Texas. Detective Corrine Henning and Detective George Givens were among the first to arrive. Henning, with a reputation for her unerring gut instinct, and Givens, known for his methodical approach to crime solving, stepped onto the ship with a sense of urgency. The media frenzy had already begun, with outlets broadcasting live updates, fueling public interest and speculation. The detectives made their way to Stateroom 7156, the last known location of the victim. To their seasoned eyes, the interior of the room appeared undisturbed, the bed neatly made, and personal effects arranged as if awaiting their owner's return. However, the balcony presented a stark contrast. Chairs were overturned, and a single glass lay shattered, its fragments catching the morning light, a silent testament to the struggle that had occurred. The crime scene was meticulously processed. Forensic teams dusted for fingerprints, combed through fibers, and collected DNA samples, while the ship's CCTV footage was seized for review. The investigators' presence was a solemn reminder to the passengers that their idyllic retreat had been breached by violence. As the investigation unfolded, the world outside continued its pace. In the background, faint sounds could be heard from the ship's onboard entertainment system, a hit song of the time, now a jarring soundtrack to a tragedy. The detectives, unfazed by the ship's grandeur or the distractions of the media, focused on the grim task at hand, piecing together the final moments of Ray Truscott's life and identifying his killer. As the Voyager of the Seas remained anchored, a mere silhouette against the June sky, the investigation into Ray Truscott's death turned to those closest to him. Dinah Truscott, 51, the victim's wife of 20 years, became the focus of intense scrutiny. Known for her gentle demeanor and her role as a devoted homemaker, Dinah was the archetype of suburban tranquility in Plano, Texas, a city that prided itself on being one of the best places to live in America. According to a CNN Money magazine feature that year, Dinah's life was seemingly filled with PDA meetings and Sunday family barbecues. Her dreams were modest, a happy family, a comfortable home, and the joy of seeing her children succeed. Yet, beneath the veneer of domestic bliss, detectives wondered if there lay a motive for murder. The interrogation was conducted away from the prying eyes of the public, who were busy discussing the case on internet forums, a burgeoning trend in the early 2000s. Detectives Henning and Givens, in a room with views of the endless ocean, questioned Dinah. Her responses were punctuated by moments of confusion and long pauses. She struggled to account for her whereabouts at the time her husband was believed to have been thrown overboard. Her alibi, that she had been asleep in their stateroom, offered little in the way of corroboration. Despite her seemingly oblivious nature, Dinah's reactions during the interrogation raised suspicion. Was her demeanor a mask for something more sinister, or simply the shock of a grieving widow? The detectives took note of her every word and gesture, aware that in cases such as these, the truth was often hidden in plain sight. As the investigation continued, the question remained, was Dinah Truscott a heartbroken spouse or a cunning adversary? The inquiry into Ray Truscott's death intensified as the focus shifted to Bob Hackles, a 56-year-old colleague of the victim. Hackles, a seasoned insurance analyst at New Life Financial, was aboard the Voyager of the Seas with his family. His outward persona was that of an affable family man, yet beneath this facade was a clandestine relationship with Ray that, if exposed, could upend his life. Hackles' presence on the cruise was ostensibly for leisure, alongside his Russian wife, Irina, and their 2 children. However, investigators suspected that his true motive may have been rooted in the tangled web of his secret romantic involvement with the victim. The early 2000s were a time of contrasting attitudes towards such relationships, with television shows like Will and Grace bringing LGBTQ themes into mainstream media. Yet many still faced societal pressures to conform to traditional family structures. During the interrogation, Hackles maintained a calm exterior, answering questions with measured responses. Hackles was unflappable, even as detectives probed for a crack in his composure, seeking to understand the nature of his relationship with Ray and the potential for jealousy or betrayal to have driven him to murder. The police were methodical in their approach, aware that the success of shows like CSI Crime Scene Investigation, which had captivated audiences with its portrayal of forensic science, had raised public expectations for swift and conclusive detective work. They scrutinized Hackles' alibi, cross-referencing it with witness statements and security footage, determined to uncover whether his calm was a facade for a more turbulent inner turmoil. As the investigation delved deeper, the question loomed: could Bob Hackles, the man who shared whispered confidences and stolen moments with Ray Truscott, be capable of ending the life of the man he loved? On June 17, 2001, 2 days after the discovery of Ray Truscott's body, a new piece of evidence surfaced aboard the Voyager of the Seas. The morning was marked by a gentle Gulf breeze as a crew member, performing routine maintenance along the starboard side of the ship, noticed something unusual. Caught on a piece of protruding metalwork was a fragment of fabric, navy blue, with a distinctive pattern that matched a shirt belonging to Bob Hackles, one of the prime suspects in the case. The finding was a potential turning point in the investigation, a tangible clue in a case that had thus far offered few. The fragment was immediately secured and sent for forensic analysis, with the hope that it might yield DNA or other materials that could link the suspect to the crime scene. The media, always hungry for a new angle on the story, began to speculate on the implications of this development. The FBI agents, well-versed in the nuances of evidence collection and its role in building a case, treated the discovery with the gravity it deserved. The weather, which had been a mix of sun and cloud, seemed to mirror the uncertainty that hung over the ship as passengers and crew alike pondered the significance of the find. As the news of the fabric fragment reached the mainland, it became a topic of discussion on news programs, where anchors dissected the latest developments with legal experts. The cruise ship, once a symbol of escape and relaxation, had become the backdrop for a narrative that was as gripping as any summer blockbuster, with the added weight of real-world consequence. The investigators, for their part, continued their meticulous work, aware that in the world of criminal justice, unlike the instant gratification of winning a game of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, patience and thoroughness were the keys to uncovering the truth. The investigation's next chapter unfolded as attention turned to Carl Bauhines, a 49-year-old librarian from Largo, Florida, whose connection to Ray Truscott added another layer of complexity to the case. Carl, a seemingly unassuming man, was revealed to have been entwined in a secret romantic liaison with Ray, a fact unknown to both Dinah Truscott and Bob Hackles, the other suspects in this unfolding drama. On board the Voyager of the Seas, Carl's demeanor stood in contrast to the ship's vibrant atmosphere, which typically buzzed with the excitement of vacationing families and couples. His quiet, introspective nature belied the depth of his involvement with Ray, and as the FBI delved into his background, they uncovered a man who dreamed of a life less ordinary. yearning for acceptance in a world that was just beginning to embrace diversity in love and relationships. In the interview room, Carl's emotions were palpable. He vacillated between anger and profound sadness, his dreams of a future with Ray now irreparably shattered. For Carl, there was no escape from the harsh glare of suspicion that now shone upon him. His responses to the FBI's probing questions were tinged with desperation as he struggled to reconcile his clandestine relationship with the brutal end it had met. As the investigation wore on, the public followed the case with the same fervor as they did the unfolding saga of Gary Condit and Chandra Levy, a scandal that dominated the news cycles. The question on everyone's mind was whether Carl Bauhines, a man who sought solace in the quiet corridors of a library, could be capable of a crime as loud as murder. The investigation aboard the Voyager of the Seas culminated in a revelation that pierced the veil of mystery surrounding Ray Truscott's death. Bob Hackles, a 56-year-old insurance analyst and secret romantic partner of the victim, emerged as the perpetrator. The evidence painstakingly gathered by the FBI pointed irrefutably to a crime of passion, a fatal encounter that transpired against the backdrop of the ship's grandeur in the Gulf of Mexico's expanse. Bob, known for his convivial demeanor and professional success, was a man whose outward life belied the turmoil within. His dreams of a concealed relationship with Ray, free from the scrutiny of society and the constraints of his own family, had been dashed by Ray's intention to leave him for Carl Bauhines. The revelation had ignited a rage in Bob that culminated in a violent confrontation, ending with Ray's body being cast into the ocean's depths. The method was as brutal as it was definitive. Bob had pushed Ray from the balcony of their stateroom after a heated argument. The motive was clear, a mixture of jealousy, fear, and the unbearable prospect of losing Ray to another. The crime, devoid of weapons or premeditation, was an impulsive act that forever altered the course of several lives. As the news of the murderer's identity spread, the story became a subject of intense media scrutiny. Outlets like the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal typically focused on the economic downturn and the recently introduced tax cuts by President George W. Bush, now found space on their front pages for the sordid details of the case. Bob Hackles, once a respected member of his professional community, now faced the stark reality of his actions. His life, once interwoven with the fabric of Ray's, had unraveled in a moment of uncontrolled fury. The question of why a man would commit such an act hung heavily in the air, a reminder of the fragile nature of the human psyche. The climactic turn in the investigation aboard the Voyager of the Seas came on the morning of June 20, 2001. The skies above Galveston, Texas, were overcast, a somber reflection of the proceedings on the ship below. Bob Hackles, a 56-year-old insurance analyst and the man now known to have ended Ray Truscott's life, was taken into custody. The arrest, executed with precision by the FBI, was the culmination of days of meticulous investigation and evidence gathering. Hackles, who had maintained a veneer of composure throughout the interrogation process, met his fate with a quiet resignation. There was no dramatic outburst or plea for innocence. Instead, he seemed to have accepted the reality of his situation, perhaps aware that the weight of the evidence against him left little room for denial. The news of the arrest spread rapidly, with networks breaking into their regular programming to report the latest development. As Hackles was escorted off the ship in handcuffs, the passengers, who had been enjoying amenities like the ship's casino and Broadway-style shows, were now silent witnesses to the stark reality of justice being served. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of relief and morbid curiosity. Dinah Truscott and her children, who had boarded the cruise to celebrate a milestone anniversary, were left to grapple with a complex mix of emotions. The revelation of Ray's secret life and the identity of his killer had torn through their family, leaving them to face a future marred by tragedy and public scrutiny. The trial of Bob Hackles, set against the backdrop of a post-Y2K America grappling with the tremors of a shifting global landscape, commenced with the gravity befitting a case that had captured the nation's attention. The courtroom, often a stage for the dramas of human conflict, was packed with journalists, each racing to feed the public's appetite for updates, much like the frenzy surrounding the release of Apple's iPod later that year. A device that promised to revolutionize the way we consumed media. Prosecutor Angelo Argelia, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for his relentless pursuit of justice, presented a narrative of betrayal and jealousy that had culminated in the tragic death of Ray Truscott. He painted Hackles as a man whose facade of normalcy was shattered by the revelation of his secret relationship and the prospect of its end. The defense, led by the astute Janet Pringles, countered with an appeal to the jury's sense of compassion, framing Hackle's actions as those of a man driven to the brink by emotional turmoil, not unlike the characters in the popular primetime drama The Sopranos, which delved into the complexities of the human psyche. As the trial unfolded, the victims' families sat in the gallery, their presence a silent testament to their loss. The emotional toll on Dinah Truscott and her children was palpable, their grief compounded by the media circus that had descended upon their private tragedy. The verdict, when it came, was unanimous. Guilty. The sentencing followed, with Hackles receiving a punishment that some deemed harsh, others lenient, but all recognized as the irreversible conclusion to a series of irrevocable choices. The courtroom, which had been a crucible of tension, released a collective breath as justice was pronounced. The aftermath of the verdict rippled through the Truscott family and friends, their reactions a mosaic of relief, vindication, and unending sorrow. The case, which had unfolded alongside the country's preoccupation with events like the brewing storm over the Enron scandal, left an indelible mark on all who had been touched by it. In the wake of the trial that concluded with Bob Hackle's conviction, the individuals connected to the tragedy aboard the Voyager of the Seas began the arduous process of moving forward. The Truscott family, their private grief made public, sought solace in the routines of daily life. Dinah Truscott, once planning for an anniversary celebration, now faced the daunting task of rebuilding her family's world without Ray. The children grappled with the dual loss of their father and the family's untarnished image. Detective Corinne Henning and Detective George Gibbons, the law enforcement duo who had pieced together the case, continued their careers with the FBI, each carrying the weight of the Truscott case as a somber reminder of the complexities hidden within human relationships. The case had tested their resolve and proven their dedication to uncovering the truth. Carl Bauhines returned to his life in Largo, Florida, his brief and secret romance with Ray now a closed chapter, its details buried in court documents and news archives. He sought anonymity, a return to the quietude of his profession, away from the sensationalism that had briefly thrust him into the public eye. The world outside, meanwhile, carried on at its relentless pace. The stock market, which had been in a state of flux since the dot-com bubble burst, continued to ebb and flow, a reflection of the nation's economic uncertainties. Brands like Nokia and Motorola dominated the mobile phone market, their devices a ubiquitous presence in the hands of those eager to stay connected in an increasingly digital age. As the years passed, the memory of the case faded from the public consciousness, replaced by new headlines and scandals. Yet for those directly affected by the tragedy, the echoes of the past remained. They moved through their lives, each day a step further from the events on the ship, but forever aware of the indelible mark left by the case of Ray Truscott. As we close this chapter of True Crime Case Files, we're reminded of the unpredictable nature of the human heart. A voyage that began with celebration ended in tragedy, leaving us to ponder the line between love and obsession. Maggie Lewin, a warm-hearted and hospitable woman, was a 45-year-old housewife who took great pride in her role as a mother to her two children, Mocha and Tucker. Married to local dentist Dr. Dean Lewin DDS, Maggie dedicated herself to maintaining the perfect household. However, beneath her cheerful exterior, Maggie yearned for excitement and fulfillment beyond the confines of domesticity. Desperate to escape the monotony of her everyday life in Elgin, Illinois, she found solace in the local women's book club. The book club, known as the Literary Ladies, was a close-knit group of women who met every Tuesday evening at each of their houses. Led by the charismatic and enigmatic Linda Bernardino Scalco, the club provided an escape from the mundane reality of their suburban lives. They discussed everything from classic literature to contemporary bestsellers, with a particular love of the novelist Joyce Lehman. They loved to share their thoughts and opinions over cups of steaming coffee and plates of homemade sugar cookies. Maggie, with her insatiable thirst for literary adventure, quickly became an active member of the book club. She relished the intellectual discussions, the camaraderie, and the opportunity to step out of her comfort zone. The club became her sanctuary, a place where she could explore her hidden desires and dreams. Little did Maggie know that her involvement with the Literary Ladies would lead her down a dark and treacherous path. As the days grew colder in January 1993, a sinister plot began to unfold within the confines of the book club. Secrets, jealousy, and betrayal simmered beneath the surface, threatening to shatter the illusion of harmony. On a fateful day, January 23, 1993, with the weather bleak and cold, Maggie's life came to a tragic end. Her body was discovered in her own bathroom,
brutally beaten to death with a claw hammer. It was Karen Evans, Maggie's closest friend and next-door neighbor, who made the horrifying discovery. Karen, a petite woman with a heart-shaped face, auburn hair, and a heart of gold, had gone over to Maggie's house for their regular Saturday morning coffee and chat session. Little did she know that this visit would forever change her life. As Karen entered the house, she immediately noticed something was amiss. The air felt heavy with an unspoken tension. The usual warmth and laughter that filled the air during their weekly get-togethers were replaced by an eerie silence. Concerned, Karen called out for Maggie, but there was no response. She made her way towards the bathroom. As Karen made her way up the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest, she noticed a faint smell of iron in the air. The bathroom door stood ajar, casting an eerie glow onto the hallway. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door, and what she saw would haunt her forever. Maggie's lifeless body lay sprawled on the cold tile floor, her once vibrant eyes now vacant and lifeless. Blood stained the walls, and the claw hammer, the murder weapon, lay beside her. Upon opening the bathroom door, Karen's worst fears were realized. Karen's initial reaction was one of shock and disbelief. She couldn't comprehend the brutality of what she was witnessing. Panic surged through her veins as she frantically dialed 911, her voice trembling as she relayed the grisly scene to the dispatcher. News of the murder spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community of Elgin. The town was gripped with a sense of unease, as neighbors locked their doors and whispered about the possibility of a killer lurking among them. On that fateful winter day of January 23, 1993, tragedy struck the quiet town of Elgin, Illinois. The murder of Maggie Lewin, a beloved housewife and mother, sent shockwaves through the community, leaving everyone in disbelief. The police, led by Detective Carl Bledsoe, wasted no time in launching a thorough investigation into this heinous crime. Arriving promptly at the crime scene, the police were met with a chilling sight. The bathroom, once a place of tranquility and cleanliness, now bore the grim evidence of a brutal attack. Bloodstains splattered across the walls, and floor told a story of violence and terror. It was clear that Maggie had been mercilessly beaten to death with a claw hammer, a weapon that had been turned against her in her own home. Detective Bledsoe and his team meticulously combed through every inch of the crime scene, leaving no stone unturned. They meticulously collected any potential evidence, ensuring that no detail went unnoticed. Fingerprints were carefully lifted, blood samples were taken, and any possible evidence was meticulously cataloged. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives began to piece together the last moments of Maggie's life. Interviews with friends and family revealed that she had been an active member of a local women's book club. Could there be a connection between her involvement in the club and her untimely demise? The detectives delved deeper into the lives of the book club members, scrutinizing their backgrounds and relationships. They discovered that tensions had been simmering beneath the surface, hidden behind the facade of friendship. Petty jealousies, secret affairs, and whispered rumors plagued the seemingly innocent lives of these women. The media, hungry for a sensational story, descended upon Elgin, amplifying the already palpable tension in the air. News outlets like the local newspaper, the Elgin Courier, and the television station, WGN-TV, covered the case extensively, eager to capture every twist and turn. The town, once known for its peaceful, boringly Midwestern charm, became a hub of speculation and intrigue. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation continued to unfold. Detective Bledsoe analyzed the evidence, sifting through countless leads and alibis. The pressure to solve this case weighed heavily on his shoulders as the community anxiously awaited justice for Maggie Lewin. Linda Bernardino-Scalco, a 61-year-old local librarian and esteemed leader of the Women's Book Club, found herself at the center of suspicion in the shocking murder of Maggie Lewin. Known for her bookish exterior, sharp intellect, and extensive knowledge of literature, Linda had always presented herself as a respected member of the community. However, as the investigation unfolded, a hidden side to Linda's life began to emerge, casting doubt on her innocence. The Women's Book Club, once thought to be a gathering of literary enthusiasts, turned out to be far more than meets the eye. Behind closed doors, this seemingly innocent group transformed into a secret society of female sexual exploration,
engaging in clandestine activities such as swinging and orgies that shocked the conservative and very Midwestern community of Elgin, Illinois. The members of the club, including Linda and Maggie, indulged in a world of forbidden sexual desires, where erotic boundaries were pushed and inhibitions were cast aside. As the investigators delved deeper into Linda's background, they discovered a trail of secrets and hidden rendezvous. The evidence pointed to a complicated web of relationships and encounters that seemed inconceivable in the quiet suburban town. The police meticulously examined phone records, uncovering late-night calls and cryptic messages exchanged between Linda, Maggie, and the other members of the book club. The investigation revealed a complex network of desire and betrayal, where passion and jealousy intertwined. The motive behind Maggie's brutal murder remained elusive, leaving investigators puzzled. Linda's demeanor during the interrogations only added to the enigma surrounding her. At times, Linda, who hid a passionate and deeply sexual nature, displayed flashes of anger, vehemently denying any involvement in the crime. Yet, in other moments, she exuded an eerie calmness, as if she held the key to a dark secret that could unravel the entire mystery. As Detective Carl Bledsoe and his team continued to piece together the puzzle, they found themselves entangled in a web of deceit and desire, where nothing was as it seemed. With each new lead, the truth seemed to slip further away, leaving the investigators and the community desperate for answers. Karen Evans, a close friend and neighbor of Maggie Lewin, became the focus of the investigation as the second suspect in the murder case. Known for her friendly and cheerful demeanor, Karen appeared to be the epitome of suburban normalcy. However, behind closed doors, a darker side of Karen was revealed. During the course of the investigation, it was uncovered that Karen and Maggie had a sexual relationship within the women's book club. While this revelation added a new layer of complexity to the case, it also shed light on a potential motive for the crime. Karen also admitted to feeling jealous of Maggie's sexual encounters with Linda Bernardino Scalco, the leader of the book/secret sex club. The police interrogated Karen extensively, carefully observing her reactions and demeanor. They sought to uncover the truth behind Maggie's murder and determine Karen's involvement, if any. In the interrogation room, Karen's emotions ranged from anger to sadness, as she struggled to come to terms with her feelings of jealousy and betrayal. The investigators probed deeper, questioning Karen about her relationship with Maggie and the dynamics within the book club. As the interview progressed, Karen revealed that she had developed strong feelings for Maggie over time. She admitted to feeling a sense of possessiveness and resentment towards Linda, who had also engaged in sexual activities with Maggie. Karen's jealousy had intensified, leading to a growing tension between the three women. The investigators delved into Karen's background, seeking any possible connections to the crime. They discovered that Karen had a history of emotional instability and had previously sought therapy for her jealousy issues. This revelation added another dimension to the case, as the police considered the possibility of Karen's emotions spiraling out of control. Furthermore, the investigators uncovered evidence that Karen had been researching ways to deal with jealousy and anger. They found books and articles on self-help, anger management, and relationships in her possession. These findings raised suspicions about Karen's state of mind and her potential involvement in Maggie's murder. As the investigation continued, the police meticulously examined Karen's alibi and cross-referenced it with witness testimonies and physical evidence. They also analyzed Karen's phone records, seeking any communication that could link her to the crime. Every detail was scrutinized in their pursuit of the truth. The case of Maggie Lewin's murder had taken a complex turn, with Karen Evans emerging as a key figure in the investigation. The police were determined to uncover the truth behind Maggie's untimely demise and determine Karen's role in the shocking crime. The investigation into the murder of Maggie Lewin took an unexpected turn as new evidence emerged, providing a glimmer of hope for the dedicated team of detectives. On a frigid January day in 1993, the police made a breakthrough that could potentially crack the case wide open. The weather, a bone-chilling cold that gripped Elgin, Illinois, played a crucial role in this significant discovery. It was on January 27th, when the temperature plummeted to a freezing -10 degrees Fahrenheit, that a key piece of evidence was uncovered. Detective Carl Bledsoe and his team meticulously analyzed the data from various sources, including local meteorological records and eyewitness testimonies. It was during their investigation that they stumbled upon a witness who had been in close proximity to Maggie's house on the night of her murder. Howard Johnson, a resident of the neighboring street, recalled hearing a loud commotion emanating from Maggie's house at around 9:30 p.m. He had been outside, shoveling the snow that had accumulated during the day, when he heard what sounded like a heated argument followed by a series of thuds. Detective Bloodsoe immediately recognized the significance of Mr. Johnson's account. The freezing temperatures that night had caused the freshly fallen snow to preserve the footprints left behind by anyone who had been near the crime scene. The detective and his team rushed to Maggie's house, carefully combing through the snow-covered ground for any signs of footprints. Their efforts paid off when they discovered a set of distinct footprints leading away from Maggie's house and towards the nearby park. The footprints were carefully measured and documented, revealing the precise stride length and shoe size of the individual responsible for Maggie's murder. The police compared these footprints to the shoe sizes of the prime suspects, Linda Bernardino Scalco and Karen Evans. The results were shocking. While Linda's shoe size did not match the footprints, Karen's shoe size was an exact match. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team, raising questions about Karen's potential involvement in the crime. With this crucial evidence in hand, the detectives intensified their interrogation of Karen, scrutinizing her every word and reaction. The pressure mounted as Karen's initial calmness gave way to moments of unease and anxiety. The investigation was now on a knife's edge, with the truth hanging precariously in the balance. In the ongoing investigation into the murder of Maggie Lewin, a new suspect emerged, Dr. Susan Cheong, a 42-year-old dentist and the newest member of the Women's Book Club. Dr. Cheong, known for her aloof demeanor and mysterious past, had become a person of interest in this chilling case. Dr. Cheong's personal life was shrouded in secrecy, with little known about her background or motivations. However, the police uncovered some intriguing details that may shed light on her possible involvement in this heinous crime. One key piece of information that came to light is that Dr. Cheong did not engage in the sexual activities that took place within the book club. While other members indulged in secret liaisons, Dr. Cheong remained detached, keeping her personal life tightly guarded. Another intriguing aspect of this case was Dr. Cheong's connection to a man named Dr. Dean Lewin. It had been revealed that Dr. Cheong had broken the rules of the book club by engaging in sex with a man, none other than Dr. Lewin, a fellow dentist, who happened to be Maggie Lewin's husband. This revelation raised eyebrows and sparked speculation about the extent of Dr. Cheong's involvement in the unraveling of the book club's secrets. Had she told her lover about his wife's secret sex life? As the police interrogate Dr. Cheong, they carefully observed her reactions and demeanor. Every word, every gesture was analyzed for any signs of guilt or involvement in this heinous crime. She admitted she had told Dean about his wife's dealings in the book club's secret. Might this be the breakthrough the investigators desperately need? The shocking truth behind the murder of Maggie Lewin, a seemingly ordinary housewife from Elgin, Illinois, had finally been unveiled. After a thorough investigation, it was revealed that the murderer was none other than Dr. Dean Lewin DDS, Maggie's own husband and a local dentist. The motive behind this heinous crime was a toxic combination of jealousy and desire. Driven by his intense longing for his wife and enraged by her alleged betrayal, Dr. Lewin confronted Maggie in the bathroom of their home on that fateful day in January of 1993. The details of the confrontation are chilling. In a fit of anger, Maggie admitted that yes, she had engaged in sexual relationships with the members of her women's book club, a secret gathering that turned out to be a lesbian swingers group. This revelation pushed Dr. Lewin over the edge, and he resorted to brutal violence, wielding a claw hammer to mercilessly beat his wife to death. The police meticulously pieced together the evidence, uncovering a web of deceit and hidden desires. The investigation revealed that Dr. Lewin had discovered his wife's secret through Dr. Susan Cheong, a fellow dentist and the newest member of the book club. Dr. Cheong had broken the rules of the club by engaging in a sexual relationship with Dr. Dean Miller, to whom she divulged the secrets of the book club and Maggie's infidelity. The arrest of Dr. Lewin sent shockwaves through the community of Elgin, as the once-respected dentist was exposed as a cold-blooded murderer. The media frenzy that followed the revelation of this true crime case captivated Chicagoland, with newspapers and television stations covering every detail of the investigation and subsequent trial. The trial that followed Dr. Dean Lewin's arrest for the murder of his wife, Maggie Lewin, gripped the community of Elgin, Illinois in January of 1993. The courtroom was filled with anticipation as the prosecution, led by District Attorney Geppetto Zempic, a proud Maltese immigrant, presented a compelling case against the accused. The defense, represented by Defense Attorney C. Alice Powell, sought to challenge the prosecution's narrative, delving into the complex emotions that fueled the murder. Throughout the trial, the courtroom was packed with spectators eager to witness the proceedings. Local news outlets, such as the Elgin Gazette and the Evening Star, provided updates on the trial, ensuring that the community remained informed. The trial became the talk of the town, with people discussing the case over cups of coffee at the popular local diner, Joe's Cafe. The prosecution painted a vivid picture of the crime, emphasizing the brutality of Maggie's murder and the devastating impact it had on her family. They presented evidence, including the claw hammer used as the murder weapon, which had been found hidden in Dr. Lewin's dental office. The defense, on the other hand, sought to humanize the accused, delving into his troubled past and the complex emotions that led to the tragic event. Maggie's family, including her children Mocha and Tucker, sat through the trial, their grief palpable. They listened intently as witnesses took the stand, recounting the events leading up to Maggie's death. The emotional toll on the family was evident as they grappled with the details that emerged during the trial. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Dr. Dean Lewin DDS was found guilty of the murder of his wife. The courtroom erupted with mixed emotions, as some felt that justice had been served, while others questioned whether the punishment was sufficient. The sentencing, which took place a few weeks later, saw Dr. Lewin receive a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The impact of the guilty verdict reverberated through the community, leaving a lasting impression on those involved. The Lewin family, along with Maggie's friends and neighbors, were forever changed by the events that unfolded during the trial. As the trial came to a close, the community of Elgin slowly began to heal. The book club, once a source of intrigue and scandal, disbanded, its members scattered. The town returned to its familiar routines, but the memory of Maggie's murder lingered, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. In the aftermath of the highly publicized trial that captivated the community, life slowly began to regain a sense of normalcy for Susan, Karen, and Linda, as well as the other individuals involved in this tragic case. Dr. Susan Cheong, the 42-year-old dentist and newest member of the book club, found solace in her work. She threw herself into her dental practice, dedicating long hours to her patients and honing her skills. Susan's patients, unaware of her connection to the murder case, continued to trust her with their dental needs, allowing her to gradually regain a sense of normalcy. Karen Evans, Maggie's closest friend and neighbor, found solace in the support of her community. Elgin, Illinois, a tight-knit and boringly suburban town, rallied around Karen, offering their condolences and support during her darkest moments. Linda Bernardino Scalco, the 61-year-old librarian and leader of the Women's Book Club, retreated from the public eye. The scandal surrounding the book club's true nature had tarnished Linda's reputation within the community. She resigned from her position at the local library and relocated to a small town in Florida, hoping to start anew. The Lewin children, Tucker and Mocha, sought therapy to cope with the trauma they had endured. Their sessions focused on healing, forgiveness, and finding a way to move forward. Their resilience and strength in the face of tragedy inspired those around them. As the years passed, Elgin, Illinois, a town forever marked by this tragedy, continued to grow and evolve, its residents determined to create a future that honored the memory of Maggie and brought healing to their community. As we conclude this episode of True Crime Case Files, we reflect on the tragic story of Maggie Lewin, whose death unlocked the secrets of a women's book club. This harrowing tale serves as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives.